And this is his car.
That's him sitting out in front, isn't it?
That's our boy.
Oh, it's just him.
He showed you his gun.
Hey, man, it's on.
Told I was going.
Oh.
Well, that happened. You might be wondering how I ended up here. I know I am. I was just planning to get on a plane and knock back a gin and tonic or a couple sambucas. And after a nice, turbulence-free flight, we're in West Virginia. I'll take a whimsical look at the curse of a mythical winged creature called the Mothman. I was gonna, maybe stake out a haunted house, take a boat ride, do a rock skipping contest. I'm pretty good at skipping rocks. But then, just like senior prom, nothing goes quite as you hoped.
Our tires got slashed?
Yeah.
Chief Cornstalk said, "May the stain of our blood curse your lands and your industry."
The Mothman appeared.
Then boom, your BB mine blew up.
We are down in the holler now.
Here's a quick story about Point Pleasant, West Virginia, a town with a terrific name. So it's November 1966, and a couple of guys are digging a grave at the local cemetery. Don't worry, it's their job. When suddenly they see a large winged creature with red eyes hovering over them. 3 days later, some teenagers are playing grab at the local abandoned TNT storage facility, where we all had our first kiss. And they see this humanoid winged creature, but this time it follows their car going 100 miles an hour. Next thing you know, it's taking another guy's dog, and then here's where the story gets really weird. People all over town started reporting these strangers in suits. And a waitress at the diner says they ordered food but didn't know how to use their hands to pick up their utensils. No, seriously, she said that. And then, in December of '67, people said they saw the Mothman circling a bridge. Seconds later, the unthinkable happens.
It was December 15th, a Friday. It was really gray and overcast that day. It was cold.
Right.
Peggy Huber was 21 years old and driving her brand new red convertible the day the Curse of the Mothman really took off.
Traffic was extremely heavy, and 2 semis went by, and they wouldn't give me a break in traffic.
Were they kind of giving you like a little bit of a hard time?
Yeah, I couldn't make the green light, so I stopped, and I had reached down to check the knobs on the radio and heard this awful noise. And when I looked up, the bridge was falling. It just looked like Tinker Toys. Cars fell, and the steel beams fell on top of the cars.
Do you know how many people died on the bridge?
I believe there were 46.
46 dead.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if those guys had let you in, you must think about that
I would have
sometimes.
been right between them on the bridge. That would have changed my whole life.
It was the deadliest bridge collapse in American history. And some locals say it was caused by the ultimate harbinger of doom.
They said that he appeared before the bridge fell, and it got labeled the Mothman. It's like a legend. And the story was that wherever he was, that there was going to be a disaster. The following year, the Point Pleasant courthouse had an explosion. They blamed the Mothman for that, too.
Do you believe it?
I think there's a reason behind it.
Yeah.
It just didn't happen to happen.
So if you see the Mothman on your bridge,
Don't cross the
don't
bridge.
cross the bridge. That's good advice.
Now here's the thing. I'm not here to rain on your parade about the Mothman. or any other fusion of human and nocturnal insect of the order Lepidoptera. But this part of West Virginia has seen an awful lot of tragedy since the Curse of the Mothman began. Rivers of black sludge wiping out entire towns, mines collapsing, apocalyptic factory explosions. Is it all caused by the Mothman? It's maybe not the most obvious first culprit that comes to mind, but I'm not carrying a gavel, and hopefully neither are you. So instead of getting all judgy, just take my hand, and let's jump down this rabbit hole together.
This is a statue here. Have y'all seen it?
There it is. What do you think? Is that what it looked like?
No, that's not what it looked like. It was not muscle-bound like that, nor the wings were like that.
This is Faye Laporte. In the fall of '67, she's one of the many people in Point Pleasant who say they saw the Mothman.
How old were you at the time?
I was about probably 12, 13, and about where that green sign is,
All right.
that's when my brother knows something was beside my window.
What was it?
It was between a human and a bird put together. And the eyes they had, they were really big and red. You could just see it plain as day. It was just right there.
Were you scared?
Yes.
So what happened? What'd you guys do?
My brother started speeding up, and this was the TNT area where they made the weapons for the war. So he jerked up in here. He slammed on the brakes, and then it jumped right on the hood here. And it just turned sideways. And it took off and opened up the big bird-like wings that was big enough to carry it up in the air like that, and it just went off into the night. But my brother wanted to go back out there. So the next day, we come back down here. There was the military already there.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's not just Faye and her brother. Other people in town say they saw the military swarm the Mothman's lair.
There is a bunker up here. People say Mothman lives inside it, but I've never been into it.
So this is Mothman's lair.
Yeah.
You want to come look, Faye? You coming in with us?
No, I'll leave that all up to y'all.
All right. All right.
Don't bring him back.
Maybe I'm gonna walk in there and find visual proof of the mysterious Birdman and make TV history, fame at last. Or maybe more like Geraldo storming Al Capone's vault. Utter national permanent disgrace, a mustachioed laughingstock for eternity. If only I could swing the mustache.
This is it. This is the Mothman's lair. Hello, Mr. Mothman.
Deep in the mountains of West Virginia, the people of Point Pleasant pinpointed this particular place as the Palace of the Mothman. Oof, sorry, the alliteration I couldn't stop it. As the Palace of the Mothman, a flying humanoid creature with a terrible curse. If you see him, something awful is gonna happen.
Do I knock? Hello, Mr. Mothman. So this is it. Mothman's lair. Wow. This is a TNT storage facility. And this whole area is dotted with these storage bunkers. There was 30 or 40 of them. This whole facility was producing TNT all through World War II. And right at 1945, as the war ended, they shut this place down. In 1983, this was declared an EPA Superfund site. So there's no Mothman here, but there is chemical poisoning.
From a sudden bridge collapse that killed 46 people, to the military allegedly swarming a remote TNT bunker in the woods, there's no doubt that strange events have gone down in Point Pleasant. But is the supernatural monster really to blame? Let's dig deeper into some of the other mysterious disasters from this area. The hills in this part of West Virginia are a honeycomb of coal mines. It's a dangerous industry, one that's no stranger to catastrophe.
I had a real good friend got killed. You know, sometimes you're just within seconds of being, a fatality.
We had one guy that hit his head on the top and broke his neck.
Wow.
A guy run the motor.
Oh, no.
When that auger kicked on, ground him up.
Killed him.
Oh, yeah, there was nothing left of him.
Ugh.
Took over 3 months to clean that up. Then, boom, UBB mine blew up.
What happened there?
Coal dust is highly explosive. And a lot of times you'll get an ignition,
There was an explosion?
a gigantic explosion.
The Upper Big Branch, or UBB mine, exploded one afternoon in April of 2010, deep in the heart of West Virginia's coal country. It was the deadliest mining disaster in the U.S. in more than 35 years.
Well, it seems like it's a super dangerous job.
That is a fact.
Coal mining is dangerous, but still, I hate to say this, but most of the fatalities are here in West Virginia.
No.
Makes you wonder.
Right.
Knock on wood.
West Virginia often leads the nation in annual coal mining fatalities, and that's a contest nobody wants to win. But the truth is, the majority of the fatalities inside the coal mines of West Virginia happened long before the Mothman was even a whisper. So could there be something else going on here, something more ancient? Could it be that the rabbit hole goes deeper than we thought? Now, Faye mentioned something to me yesterday in the car, and I had originally dismissed it as witty banter.
We're the 5th descendants. Ain't that something? 5th descendant from Chief Cornstalk that was murdered here.
Wow.
When he was murdered, he put a curse on this place. Some people think that that's the real curse. Mothman was just a part of it.
So who exactly is this Chief Cornstalk? And could the legend of the Mothman be a distraction from another curse? Something much older, something written in blood from our savage colonial history. Well, for those of you in the backseat, buckle up. I've got a theory. I'm not saying it's brilliant, but I'm also not saying it's not brilliant. I came to West Virginia to look into the curse of the Mothman, a winged harbinger of doom who first appeared in 1966. But there's a laundry list of tragic events going down here long before the Mothman even appeared. And now I'm hearing about a lesser known but much older curse that some say is the origin of West Virginia's tragic history.
Chief Cornstalk that was murdered here.
Wow.
He put a curse on this place. Some people think that's the real curse.
Okay, Chief Cornstalk and a deathbed curse hundreds of years before the Mothman? I'm listening.
In the 18th century, the British governor met this Shawnee chief called Cornstalk.
He asked Cornstalk for 100,000 acres of Indian land. And Cornstalk told him, I can't give you what I don't own. The governor told him, if you don't give me the land, I will come up here and attack your towns.
Because the Shawnee refused this perfectly reasonable offer to just give their land to the British like God intended, the governor and the colonists attacked. They launched a nasty 6-year struggle culminating in the bloody Battle of Point Pleasant at the confluence of the Kanawha and the Ohio rivers, the very spot where the Silver Bridge would collapse nearly 200 years later. The colonists captured acres of land and slaughtered hundreds of Shawnee. 3 years later, Chief Cornstalk was taken hostage and soon met his final fate.
Cornstalk was said to have raised up one arm and said, I have never warred with you save to protect my wigwams and my lands, and I have been murdered. For this, I call on the Great Spirit to blight your people and your industry and your lands. May the stain of our blood curse anything you try to do. That's the last thing he said.
That's insane. Wow.
European community was scared to death of that.
Right.
Although there's no written record, some have interpreted Cornstalk's final words as a curse, a decree that all who would inhabit this land were doomed. And if you ask people around here, they may be inclined to agree.
I have to say, all kinds of disappointments has happened here. This is an old industrial area, and there's tons of things that went wrong. Silver Bridge was just one of the things they blamed on the curse.
Be interesting.
The collapse of the Silver Bridge might have more of a connection to Chief Cornstalk's curse, blighting the people and industry, than it does to any 8-foot-tall half-man, half-moth. Well, at least there's a real grievance, right? I need to keep digging.
This is it.
You were how old?
9 months old.
9 months.
My mother and brother heard a truck coming. And my brother came out, and he was seeing this just like a tsunami. It was about 20 foot of black water that was just like rushing through the valley.
Wow.
So he went back in, and he told my mother, run for the hills. So they grabbed me as fast as they could and ran. And the water had gotten to their ankles, so they couldn't pick their feet up anymore because it's a sludge. So the only thing that they knew to do was to grab one arm and one leg, and count to 3, and throw me as far as they could.
And that's what they did. They just threw you as far as they could.
Yeah. And after they threw me, both of them drowned.
Thanks to his mother's heroism, Kerry survived. He was one of the lucky few.
It was totally devastating because in this area, there's about 5,000 people and 4,000 left homeless. Not to mention that it was 125 that were killed. These were all coal camp houses.
Okay.
Coal industry kind of built them
Right.
where they normally
They owned everything, right?
Yeah. And when they clean the coal, they have to put the waste behind a dam. And
Right.
of course, they're all made of dirt.
Right.
But the rain came. And of course, they all broke.
Wow.
Everyone in the community kind of knew that those dirt dams weren't stable, but they're very trusting. Everyone is very loyal. Coal is a good job. And, you put faith in your employers.
Right. What was the coal company's excuse?
To get out of it, they said that, it rained so hard that that's an act of God. So it was an act of God that caused the damage. And it's insulting just to think that all the people here are that stupid. Like, anybody can see through that.
Right. Just trying to weasel the way out of it.
So, is this just another isolated tragedy? Or does the data support a larger pattern of West Virginia's industry leading to disaster? There's an agency that has the answers.
The Department of Environmental Protection in this state has to have a responsibility to communicate with the public and to take calls with the press.
So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make some phone calls, get in touch with someone at the Department of Environmental Protection, and set up a meeting so I can ask a high-level government official about a 240-year-old Shawnee curse and maybe hit him hard with some follow-ups about the Mothman. Because yeah, that's what I do now. I came to West Virginia to look into the curse of the Mothman. But in just a few days, the situation on the ground has radically changed.
Cornstalk said, I call on the Great Spirit to blight your people and your industry and your lands.
Sometimes you're within seconds of being a fatality.
Wow.
So, we have claims of a 240-year-old Native American curse blighting the land and its industry. Coincidentally, we have bridge collapses, failed dams, and coal mine disasters all in the same area. So my question is there an actual pattern? Is there a statistical connection between West Virginian industry and calamity? The key to answering that question is Austin Caperton, the head of the state's Department of Environmental Protection. And believe it or not, he's agreed to speak to me. It's not every day you get a meeting with one of the most powerful people in the state. And as my 6th grade teacher, Miss Sinowski, used to say, luck happens when preparation meets opportunity. Because I'm looking to get lucky, I'm doing my homework before I sit down with Austin in a couple of days.
You come from a coal background, right?
Yeah. So I grew up with coal miners on both sides of my family for generations, right to my own father.
Dustin White from the Ohio Valley Environmental Coalition has been one of the loudest voices policing the practices of big business here in West Virginia. But it turns out loud voices aren't necessarily welcome.
We've had folks who have had their pets poisoned, homes shot at, tires slashed. My life has been threatened.
Really?
That comes with the territory. You know, growing up, I was very, very pro-coal, but I really had my eyes open when I took a flyover. I knew strip mining existed, but when I saw it from the air, it just blew my mind because it was literally like every other mountain had just been completely devastated.
Strip mining, also called mountaintop removal. It took off in West Virginia in the 90s. Turns out sending a bunch of people into caves to remove coal by hand is expensive. So the coal companies got a brilliant idea.
They move onto a site, they bulldoze all the trees, they bring in these drill rigs, pack the holes with ammonium nitrate, which is also toxic, and just blow up the mountain.
It's got to go somewhere, right?
Exactly. So, of course, now all this stuff is toxic. It goes into the valley and now creates just a channel for runoff of toxic water. At last count, we had over 300 streams in West Virginia that have been biologically impaired because of fossil fuel industries.
You know, the longer we spend here and the more we learn, whether the curse is real or not, the industries are the blight. And the things that are destroying the environment are the things that, you know, the whole state is geared around. Look, this is probably
Mountaintop.
mountaintops, yeah, look at it.
Although not exactly scientific, in this part of West Virginia, there certainly does seem to be a pattern of catastrophic events and environmental turmoil at the hands of industry. And whether or not there's any connection to Cornstalk's curse, his words still ring eerily true.
I don't think the Templar vest is for you.
Yeah.
A whistleblower who used to work at one of the major coal companies has agreed to give me the lowdown on what really goes on behind the scenes. So we're not going to film his face or use his name. I'll just call him Bobby.
Largest earthen dam in the Western Hemisphere sits about an hour something away. It's a brushy fork called Slurry, with 7.8 billion gallons. Toxic waste at its crest is taller than the Hoover tank. You don't hear about that.
Yeah.
Does the state theoretically send people around to look at those dams? We can walk them and make them do it. And there's numerous chemicals in that slurry that simply keeps you up at night. It's a situation.
Right.
But yeah, y'all, I really gotta get back to the
Cool, let's get you back.
Bobby's clearly on edge, and I've made enough people edgy in my life to know when it's time to just call it a day. Hopefully, he'll be willing to talk to us more in a couple days after our meeting with Austin Caperton.
Hey, what's going on? We just wrapped up. Yeah, no, it went well. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Sam's not going to be stoked. Yeah, I'll break the news. I'll let him know. Bye. So I just got off the phone with Patrick.
Yeah.
Caperton bailed. I wonder why he bailed.
2 short sentences is all it takes to throw a major wrench into our gears. Caperton was my seat at the table. A meeting with him gave me access to the highest levels of state government. I mean, I was hoping he would be the gatekeeper to precious data and reveal what is actually going on with all the disasters here in West Virginia. So I just can't take no for an answer. At least not in writing.
This is Austin Capeton's voicemail. Leave me a message and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Caperton. This is Sam Sheridan. And I was just going to try one more time to see if we could have a conversation. And, you know, I'd love to hear your take on things. So give me a call back on this number if you get this message and have any interest. Thanks. And that's how a beautiful friendship started.
Although I'm clearly not above begging, I can tell when I'm beating a dead horse. So we gotta move on to one more meeting that I hope will explain why there seems to be so many strange disasters here in West Virginia.
Mic these pretty boys up.
Give me a clap.
Let's do it. Get on the road.
All right. What happened?
Look at this.
God, our tires got slashed?
Yeah.
What happened?
Look at this.
God, our tires got slashed?
Could be a coincidence. Or it could be that word got out that a film crew was poking around, asking questions that people just don't like.
That's not accidental.
That's not accidental. Now it's getting creepy.
So, to review, our whistleblower gets skittish on the mountaintop, and then a high-ranking government official sets a meeting, and then cancels it. And now the air is let out of our tire. I have no idea what's going on, and I'm not saying Austin Caperton snuck into our hotel parking lot during breakfast and slashed tires. But I do feel a little unwelcome.
I am a little concerned now. It's getting weird.
I'll probably never know why our tires got slashed. But we're here to figure out if a curse is connected to all the disaster here in West Virginia. And that's what we'll continue to do with a fresh rental car. Driving through the Appalachians, you're just really hit by the 2 contrasting faces of West Virginia. 1 minute, God's green earth right out of a postcard, beautiful mountains covered in happy little trees. Just Bob Ross everywhere. And then you turn a corner, and it's chemical factories and coal plants billowing particulate and smoke of an unknown origin. Kind of looks like Tim Burton's take on the Industrial Revolution. And whether it's TNT chemicals left behind inside the Mothman's lair, or mine explosions, or a flood of black sludge that wipes out an entire town, this is a place that has seen a lot of human tragedy. You can bundle it up under the blanket of a curse, but you can't deny that there is something at work here. Some relationship between West Virginian industry and a seemingly endless cycle of calamity. And since Austin Caperton won't be providing any answers, I'm turning to a trusted old buddy. Science.
So what we do in this lab is we build stuff and we break it to figure out how to make it stronger.
What a cool job, man.
No disaster is woven into the local folklore of West Virginia, quite like the collapse of the Silver Bridge.
I think there's a reason behind it.
Yeah.
It just didn't happen to happen. They said that the Mothman appeared before the bridge fell. It's like a legend.
Although I'm fairly certain a flying cryptid didn't cause this disaster, the Silver Bridge did collapse at the exact spot where the Battle of Point Pleasant was fought, and some say that was the cause of Chief Cornstalk's dying curse. So what does science have to say about that peculiar coincidence?
This is a model of the Silver Bridge.
Cool.
So the Silver Bridge was similar to a suspension bridge, except that the suspension cables were actually eye-bars.
So tell me exactly how the Silver Bridge failed. What happened?
There was a flaw. It was actually located at the end of the eye-bar. That flaw was extremely small and actually wasn't visible because it was hidden under the cap of the pin. And in this case, a very small flaw initiated a fracture.
Can you show me what that would look like?
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna apply a tension load, meaning we're gonna pull on this.
What's this kip? What is that?
So a kip is 1,000 pounds. So we're at 0.21 thousand pounds, or in other words, 22 pounds. It's incrementally adding load. This no longer is contributing at all. All the force that was in this component is now dumped into this one.
Right.
In the case of the Silver Bridge, this happened so fast. The first one failed and immediately.
Let's do it on our model.
Okay.
And here's where we smash stuff in the name of science.
So we're gonna simulate the fracture of the eye-bar by cutting one of the yellow strings. When one eye-bar failed, there just wasn't enough capacity in the rest of the system to resist all of the weight of the structure, and therefore the entire bridge collapsed.
So the Silver Bridge collapses. What's the way this could have been prevented?
The original designs for this bridge called for a suspension cable, but they decided to opt for a less redundant system with the eye-bar chains, which allowed them to dramatically reduce the cost, but it also dramatically reduced the redundancy in the system.
For those of you at home who never took an interest in civil engineering, let me spell it out for you. Redundancy equals safety.
So if they hadn't done this with the lowest bidder, there's a possibility that that failure would have happened, but they would have had enough redundancy that the bridge wouldn't have collapsed.
That's right.
For decades, West Virginians have blamed an 8-foot-tall winged creature or a 240-year-old Shawnee curse for the pattern of death and destruction. But it turns out the truth may be a lot scarier.
I do wonder, how much of the local disasters can be thrown on the doorstep of general economic pressures and lax government regulations.
If I was a government official that was part of the Silver Bridge fiasco, I'd be all too happy to have the public focus on the Mothman or Cornstalk's curse. The supernatural is a way easier pill to swallow than what might be the reality. I mean, who wants to believe that their own government is putting their lives at risk for a couple extra bucks? But putting profits above people is by no means unique to West Virginia. Hell, that's capitalism. which is as American as apple pie. So is there something special about this area that makes it susceptible to the perils of big business?
Thanks again so much for taking the time.
Sure.
I really appreciate it.
I don't always wear a linen sports coat, but when I do, I look like a rugged James Bond. But you gotta dress the part when you meet with a MacArthur Fellow, which is the greatest award for reporting there is.
West Virginia and its coal industry helped build this country and helped win 2 world wars. We're not a poor state. West Virginia is a really rich state. It's just that the wealth of it isn't shared among the people who took that wealth out of the ground.
Right.
Ken Ward is a reporter who spent the last 28 years going down the exact same rabbit hole we find ourselves in now. How does one state get locked in a particularly bad cycle of capitalism and calamity?
You have like the Department of Environmental Protection that's supposed to protect people and the environment from the damages that the coal industry can do. And you have a revolving door there of people who work in the industry and then take their turn running the agency and then go back out working for the industry.
Which seems like a sort of shameless, conflict of interest.
Sure. And those conflicts are so out in the open, they don't hide them. They're just so much more brazen. I think people are increasingly getting fed up with the way things are, but, power doesn't give up power easily.
Nobody gives up power. You have to take it.
That's right.
In every state in the nation, there's supposed to be a system in place to provide oversight. That's government regulations. But according to Ken, West Virginian business is operating particularly unchecked. So why aren't more people taking notice? Well, maybe they're too distracted by an 8-foot-tall stainless steel monument. So maybe we just need a stronger visual aid? Luckily, our coal company whistleblower has agreed to help us try and get footage of illegal activity by one of the mountaintop removal companies. I'm hoping that video proof of business run rampant in West Virginia will help us get the attention of state officials, like Austin Caperton.
And this is it here. And this is his car.
That's him sitting out in front, isn't it?
That's our boy. Oh, it's just him.
He showed you his gun.
Hey, man, don't.
He's pulling out his gun.
I know. And this is his car.
That's him sitting out in front, isn't it?
That's our boy. Oh, it's just him.
He showed you his gun.
Hey, man, don't.
He's pulling out his gun.
I know. Hey, man. Did something go wrong?
Man.
There's nothing we can do to help.
Just leave it be. Come on.
No, we'll leave. We'll leave. All right, we're leaving. Well, that was short and sweet.
Not so sweet, but short.
Short. We had our tires slashed this morning. You're starting to definitely feel not wanted. That's not a great feeling.
We were not surprised that Austin Caperton didn't want to talk to us and dropped out. But I was not expecting the guy who is supposed to be the state's biggest watchdog.
This is a guy that you thought was bulletproof, right? Like, this is a guy that's like a professional pot stirrer.
Somebody got to him.
Something happened. It's bananas.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, there was another kid down the street from me who once held me at gunpoint with a super soaker full of pee-pee. Those are his words, not mine. I didn't really expect to relive that moment when we came to West Virginia, getting into the curse of Mothman and Chief Cornstalk. Sometimes, when people are afraid to talk, that's where the gold lies. And luckily, I was able to find a few brave voices who dared to penetrate that silence. I've tracked down a woman named Susie Worley Jenkins, and she lives in a tiny town called Minden. And unlike everyone else we've tried to talk to, she and her doctor want their story told.
When did you become aware of, what was going on here?
About 38 years ago, because there was like 2,000 people lived here in this area, and there's 460-some people that we're aware of that died with cancer.
Wow.
Yeah.
My dad was a hematologist, oncologist, so his specialty was cancer. And a lot of the patients that were coming in were coal miners, and he noticed that they all came from Minden. And so he was wondering if something was in the environment affecting these people. And
Right.
so he started looking into the PCBs.
What's a PCB?
It's an organic compound that comes in this jelly-like substance. It looks like oil. They use it in mining equipment a lot. They put it in transformers or equipment to transfer heat.
My husband worked fixing transformers for all these coal mines and stuff. He remembers all the stuff in those transformers, and it had all of that PCBs in it, and oils and stuff.
By 1979 or so, they realized that PCBs is cancer-causing. So by the early 80s, they stopped letting companies use it. So what happened back then is they put all these transformers or equipment in drums, buried the drums in the soil, or they just took the stuff themselves and buried them.
But they're burying them just like in these barrels or even loose, so they're leaking.
Yes.
They used to take all the PCBs and just dump it into the
Just
mines
dump it in.
wherever. And all of these different waterways we have underground was catching all that.
And that is what our problem is. Everyone that lives there has been kind of soaking and bathing in, carcinogenic matter.
We lost our parents, brothers, and my neighbors over here died with brain tumors, skin cancer, breast cancer, and kids, that was dying with leukemia, brain tumors. My mom died with small cell lung cancer. And my husband's had cancer. I've had cancer 6 times.
Oh my God.
Right now, the main goal and the only goal is the residents want to move. And
They just feel like they're being poisoned.
Correct.
There's 250 people left out of about 2,000.
2,000.
There's 199 houses left. They don't have any equity, nothing in their homes because they're worth nothing.
Yeah. Who's going to buy anything down in a toxic area?
Exactly.
Is there any hope? Do you think anything's going to happen, or is it just going to keep getting worse?
I think it's going to get worse if we don't get some help.
Do you expect any action?
Truthfully, no.
They don't care.
Right. They're just waiting for it to go away.
Exactly.
The good news for the people of Minden is that after 30 years of lobbying, the town has finally been added to the EPA's list for further examination. Which is great because it's the first step toward actually getting their town relocated off this toxic waste dump. The bad news? There are 1,334 sites that join them on the list. There is a blight on the land and the people of West Virginia. And it's not a winged creature or the dying words of a Native American chief. Clearly, we've stumbled upon something much more tangible than the supernatural in the hills and hollers of West Virginia. And it seems to me that the perpetuation of a curse may just be a ploy to keep people from noticing that big business is ruining the land and destroying the people in the name of profit. The truth is, West Virginia is cursed by the resources that lie beneath it. And that's the real tragedy. When I was a kid, I drew all over the wall with the marker. I'm sure I had a good reason, although it escapes me now. But I did realize that I was going to get in a ton of trouble. And so I hit on the perfect alibi. The Easter Bunny did it. That was airtight. You can't poke holes in that. No one knows where the Easter Bunny is. Problem was, my parents didn't believe in the Easter Bunny anymore. I was busted. I learned a hard lesson that day about the nature of magic. Now, sadly, I'm an adult, and I envy my younger self, the one who believed in magic. Did the wrinkles and gray hair grow an inverse relationship to wonder? So what does the Easter Bunny have to do with the Bermuda Triangle? We miss that wonder. We long for a world with magic in it. So here I am on the edge of a boat in the Bermuda Triangle, and I'm hosting a TV show about curses. So maybe all hope isn't lost. There's a desire to believe in something beyond our understanding. Can a science-minded skeptic like myself reignite the spark of magic? Is there an intersection point between science and myth? Wait, what was that? Dude, that was a shark, man. Oh, there he goes. There goes the genius. I used to be a professional sailor, and at some point, I've crossed most of the world's oceans on various sailboats. And I've seen some pretty strange things.
Cheers, guys. Everybody got one.
If you want to hear some stories, just mix sailors and alcohol, and you'll turn on a spigot you wish you could stop.
Who's got like a good Bermuda Triangle story?
One time we went out with a sonar, placed it at the bottom of the ocean, and something sent a magnetic field back up. But they said it was like almost 100 feet in the ground.
Deep underneath it.
Yeah.
Probably Godzilla.
They also have the vortex around here too, right?
Yeah.
What's the vortex?
It's a spot where all the instruments go crazy and it's like a portal to another dimension or something.
Have you guys seen anything like that on here? Like weird?
I mean, there's no way to...
Sometimes you see a light, it'll be right there, and then...
I mean, you guys all know Steve Knowles, right? Like his story about they were doing like 40 knots or so. You had 3 or 4 guys on the boat. One green light came screaming up behind the boat, and then it came around to the side of the boat. They're still doing 40 knots. Lit up the whole side of the boat, and then he took off like a rocket from it.
Yeah, that's a crazy one.
Yeah.
That was the Bermuda Triangle.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
The story what everybody know, probably the Flight 19.
What do you guys think happened to Flight 19?
You know, the squadron of 5 plane that does this every day, and then this one day it just disappears, you know?
Yeah. A search plane went out and also went missing.
Right.
And that was a seaplane, yeah.
Why wouldn't a seaplane be able to land?
Yeah.
Crash it.
Right.
So it's all a mystery.
The story of the Bermuda Triangle really has 3 chapters: plane crashes, shipwrecks, and the mysterious disappearances of entire crews. We call those ghost ships. But are any of these chapters truly anomalous? Is the Bermuda Triangle more dangerous than the rest of the world's oceans? We'll analyze the planet's most infamous curse with a skeptical forensic mind.
So here it is. This is it. This is the Bermuda Triangle. You know, Florida, Bermuda to Puerto Rico. You know, it's about 500,000 square miles.
The fact is, there have been countless incidents, millions, on the world's oceans since the first seafaring people set out, nearly 50,000 years ago. Most of these are easy to explain. You know, bad weather, human error, faulty equipment. The ocean's a big, bad place. But I'm interested in the events here that have some mystery surrounding them, where it's harder to put your finger on the cause. So I've hand-selected some of the most cryptic occurrences and created incident maps of the areas surrounding the Bermuda Triangle.
You can see there's hundreds and hundreds of shipwrecks and plane crashes. This cluster here has got to be Flight 19.
The disappearance of Flight 19 is the foundation of the Bermuda Triangle legend. In early December in 1945, 5 Navy planes took off from Florida on a training mission with 14 men on board. Those planes, the infamous Flight 19, disappeared without a trace. But then one of the rescue planes that goes looking for them also completely vanishes. And now you have the seeds for a mystery. 300 boats and planes searched the water for 5 days. Not one shred of wreckage was ever found. This concrete shipwreck off the coast of Bimini is the last witness to the missing planes. While it can't tell its story in words, I'd love to find some shrapnel of evidence of what happened to Flight 19. Something to ease my skeptic mind and keep the hope for a magical world alive.
target for Flight 19. This is where Flight 19 dropped the bomb. The last place we know for sure Flight 19 came over was this wreck. Inside USS Sabrina. Kind of interesting, you're swimming around in a piece of history.
As lovely as this location is, as lucid and clean the water, I can't help but think of the 27 young men who flew over this stretch of unforgiving ocean and vanished forever in the darkness of the coming night. All those families ripped apart, children left behind without ever knowing what happened, without closure, without understanding. Did those young men fall victim to a mysterious geophysical curse? What happened out there in the darkness?
This is actually the lead ship of Flight 19.
Wow, the exact same plane as this is Flight 19.
Yes.
The final words of the men on Flight 19 have been studied and pored over. Every sentence and word analyzed in depth by the Navy's after-action report. And then, of course, reanalyzed by armchair historians and hacky, cursed TV shows.
Walk me through what happened to Flight 19. What's the deal?
It was a training flight for navigation training, believe it or not.
So we just got back from the Sapona, which we dove on. That was their target. So we know they dropped their bombs on the Sapona.
Correct.
What was their path after that?
Due east.
Due east.
For another 60, 70 miles.
Okay.
Then make a turn to the northwest.
What happened?
It's a big mystery to this day.
Right.
Nobody knows exactly what happened to him.
Nobody knows, but there are theories. Colleen Sterling is the LeBron James of aviation probability analysis. You maybe didn't know there was a LeBron James of that. After 2 years of searching for Air France Flight 447, Colleen was brought in as part of a small team to reanalyze the data. They found the wreckage in less than 5 days.
The first thing we did is looked at the 500-page Navy report that came out, the communications, all the radar hits that they had, and we wrote a chronology. The key transmissions, everything is map-based, right?
Right.
So I'll put like where they launched from and the time, and then I'll draw the line where they were supposed to go, and then I can calculate with the wind and their heading how long it should have taken them to get to their first turn point. I thought about that first turn point, and then I said, well, where could they have gone from there? They were trying to go back to the northwest, but the wind was blowing them, and they may have not made the turn sharp enough and might have got significantly blown to a different heading.
Powers, what is your compass reading, Powers? I don't know where we are. We must have gotten lost after that last turn.
MT-28, this is FT-74. What is your trouble?
Both my compasses are out, and I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
So this is the compass here.
That's the magnetic
That's
compass.
the magnetic compass. So he would be looking at this. What else would he
He
be
would look
looking
at that, and then down on his instrument panel, you have what's called the gyro compass here, that you set this with this knob to agree with this.
To agree with
this bounces around.
Sure.
That one is very stable.
Taylor, who was the flight lead, was talking about the compass didn't look right. He started to get confused.
Don't they know they have to get back?
Taylor thought that they needed to fly to the northeast because he thought they were over the Florida Keys.
How did he think
It's very hard to imagine him getting that lost. He doesn't seem to have his wits about him on this flight. Then you hear them arguing on the radio. It's really sad.
Right.
We've just passed over a small island, and we have no other land in sight.
Turn on your emergency IFF gear, or do you have it on?
IFF gear was off. I'm turning it on now.
What's ISF gear?
IFF, that's an acronym for identification, friend or foe.
Okay.
Right here, for example, see this says 1200. In an IFF, they would have given him a code to squawk.
To put
in there, and they would be picked up on their radar.
He didn't have it on.
He didn't have it on.
Should he have had it on?
Especially if I want help in finding out where I am.
Right.
FT-28 to Nanhao Able 3. One of the planes in the flight thinks if we went 270 degrees, we could hit land.
270, that's due west.
That's somebody with a decent compass, or somebody else is like, hey, we just go 270, we're gonna hit land
Because to
eventually.
get to their bombing target, they flew due east.
Right.
Well, just fly due west and then take it back where it came from.
Right. We'll hit land some point.
Yeah.
FT-28, all planes in flight. Change course to 090 for 1 minute.
So now they're going
back east again.
Back east again.
Damn it, if we just fly west, we would get home. Hold it. Head west. Damn it.
Powers, who is the ranking guy on the flight, he kept saying we need to go west.
Right.
And then it gets corroborated with a radar track that came from the Solomons aircraft carrier.
And where did that see them?
The radar track showed aircraft going south. Over land. There's a good chance that it could be somewhere in this mid-peninsula, east coast of Florida region.
So that wouldn't surprise you at all?
No, the model supports that.
Wow.
We are now flying 270 degrees. We will fly 270 degrees until we hit the beach or run out of gas.
And now they know they're in trouble because it's like
time.
They're going to run out of gas.
Yeah, and they just don't have a clue where they are.
When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together. Does everyone understand that?
In December of 1945, 5 planes flown by Navy pilots vanished into the night. Then, one of the rescue planes that went after them suffered the same fate. Collectively, the strange event is known as Flight 19.
We've just passed over a small island and we have no other land in sight.
It's the single biggest event that gave the Cursed Triangle its name. But here's a question. What if the planes didn't really go down inside the Bermuda Triangle? Does the curse dissolve into thin air?
When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together. Does everyone understand that?
There's a good chance that it could be somewhere in this mid-peninsula, east coast of Florida region. They actually could have made it back and started heading south in the time that they had before they ran out of fuel.
Wow. For 70 years, this disappearance gripped the imagination, and people assumed it crashed at sea. And what this model is showing me is there's this whole other search area that no one's even looked at.
There are still corners of Florida that nobody's been in because it's inaccessible for one reason or another.
I don't usually follow up on leads when they involve like some dude who heard something from another guy who may or may not have seen something. But Colleen's identified a search zone near a turtle preserve in central Florida. And there just happens to be a guy with a story about a crashed airplane. How do you know that this is the plane we're looking for of Flight 19?
Well, John Meyer, one of the leading researchers for Flight 19, his theory was that the 5 airplanes separated at some point in time off the eastern coast of Florida when they were trying to find land.
Right, when they got real low on fuel.
Right, and John thought that FT-81 actually made it back over land.
Right.
And the diagram that he drew, based on his theory, put FT-81 in this particular area of Florida at about the time it ran out of gas.
Really?
So we've been out here looking for this particular wreck site for a while because we've been out here tromping around in basically Everglades type of conditions.
As horrific and sad as it sounds, planes crash all the time. If we find out where any part of Flight 19 actually went down, well, then the planes didn't disappear at all. And definitely not in the Bermuda Triangle. And they're just part of a tragic list with thousands and thousands of other entries.
When John passed away, we're not really sure what happened to his notes, and we had Hurricane Dorian this fall, and it really flooded the area. Without John's notes, we're looking for the proverbial needle in the haystack, but we're not even sure which haystack to look in.
With Colleen Sterling confirming this area as the most likely location that Flight 19 went down, we decided to bring in some technology to speed up the search. So this is a LiDAR drone. What does that mean?
So it is a multi-rotor quadcopter, and it has a LiDAR unit on it.
Right.
Basically the same principle as a policeman with a speed gun. Shoots out a laser, hits something solid, the return comes back, and then it highly accurately marks those points. Millions of points of rotation, thousands of rotations a second. When it's all said and done, Mike, he'll filter it out so we can actually get the vegetation away and look for the impressions.
Great. Yeah. Well, let's get it done.
Arming the props. All right, taking off.
since we have that high level of accuracy, all of those like bottom points, we're going to be really highly confident that those are actually ground. That's what's going to, allow us to give you guys an awesome representation of this landscape as if we had just, burned all the vegetation down. So, basically what we're looking for is artificial features. Right down in here is a nice little cross. See this impression here that creates this line? It's pretty darn straight. And then you have another one right here. It's very unusual for a natural feature to have such pretty geometry, right? I think this is the best place to look for this wreck.
All right.
Straight ahead here. Just head a little bit left. We should be getting pretty close. There's a break in the weeds right there.
There's something here.
What you got?
Something burned up. Oh yeah, that's it, man.
There we go.
Right? That's gotta be it.
That's gotta be it. Look, that would have been attached to the back of an engine. There's the tire.
Cool.
It came in pretty steep. There's all kinds of debris in there. That would have been the IFF unit, the friend or foe unit.
Oh, okay, yeah.
IFF gear was off. I'm turning it on now.
What will be the next step for you?
The rest of the airplane is probably buried. What we're looking for is a data plate on the front of the engine. But to dig in the wildlife management area, we have to have a separate permit to do that. But it is something that we can come back and do.
While we need a serial number to say if this World War II era wreck is one of the planes from Flight 19, there's a chance at least one of them is not lost in the Bermuda Triangle at all.
This could be FT-81.
Which would mean some of them at least made it back to land.
Right.
The truth is, the psychological grip of the Bermuda Triangle's curse extends well beyond 6 missing planes. So while Nate works on digging out the engine block,
yeah, I wouldn't want to be the one to dig. I was hoping you could dig.
My investigation moves to phase 2, ghost ships. There comes a time in everyone's life where you find yourself sitting in a dark room at 3 a.m., half-eaten turkey sandwich, typing Bermuda Triangle mysteries into the search engine. What you tend to find are long lists of disappearances, ships and planes vanishing. And there's a list of theories that goes along with it. Magnetic fields, mermaids, gigantic undersea methane bubbles. But it goes way out to alien wormholes and time vortices, Atlantis, were they sucked under by the Kraken? Now some of these theories are fairly bonkers, but others, they seem pretty plausible. And then sometimes you find something that does seem real and fascinating and truly inexplicable. Something that on the surface defies any rational explanation.
Here's maybe the most interesting incident map. This is ghost ships. So ghost ships were ships that are just floating, drifting in the ocean with nobody on them. And this is from the U.S. Hydrographic Survey. They documented 1,600 ghost ships. Yeah, there's something very sort of eerie and terrifying in this idea of 1,600 ships out here. And you don't know what happened to the crew. I mean, where did everybody go, or where are the bodies? How this is happening.
During a 7-year survey starting in 1887, the U.S. Hydrographic Office found the existence of 1,600 ships floating at sea without a single soul on board. 1,600 floating ships and 0 sailors. That math seems off. Now, I'm not saying that it's not aliens, because it could be. But let's see how a scientist who studies the world's oceans explains it.
They call this area the doldrums.
The doldrums.
The atmospheric circulation starts with a lot of warm, moist air rising from the Pacific in the tropical area. And once it reaches high altitudes, it starts heading toward the poles. And at a certain latitude, which is in this area, the air starts sinking.
Yeah.
And associated with them is very little wind. So pre-19th century, all the ships were sails.
Right.
So these sailboats required wind to move.
Right. So it just sort of sits there.
And it just sits there. But other things like large mats of sargassum weed, which are less buoyant than water, they float. You had these mats of sargassum weed that you just literally got stuck in. Big mats are 100 yards wide and almost a mile long.
Wow.
You're stuck.
Yeah, you imagine 6 weeks of it or 7 weeks of it running out of water.
And you're hoping for some winds, you're hoping to find some current.
Yeah, you're hoping for something to blow, right? Wow. I can't imagine anything creepier than running into a ship
in the middle of nowhere
with nobody on it. What's your theory? Why would all these boats end up empty?
There are some people out there that believe aliens are involved.
Sure.
But, you know, I'm a scientist. I'm waiting to see the first true documented case of the alien abduction.
Right.
But they do have these ocean vortices. If you got caught in those, you go, oh, great. I'm finally in some decent
somewhere.
current. But they spin around, and in the order of 9, 10 days, they basically bring you back to the same location.
Which would be tough if you're running out of water.
And as you know, if you drink salt water over time, it makes you a little crazy.
Yeah.
You get dehydrated.
You hallucinate, things like that. Yeah.
And that, you know, it helps to add to all the great legends.
Right.
About mermaids and monsters and maelstroms and
the Bermuda Triangle, right?
And the Bermuda Triangle.
You can sort of imagine the mariners out here during the age of sail being stuck. And I think that's why sailors get so superstitious, because they have so little control over the weather and so many things. So, you know, you never sail on a Friday. You gotta be careful whistling on a boat because you can whistle up a breeze. You know, there's a trillion sailor superstitions, and it probably comes from a sense of powerlessness and being trapped. We were in Hamilton Harbor in Bermuda, and I was anchored there in an 85-foot steel ketch. The tail end of a hurricane came through. And we heard on the radio 6 vessels, you know, calling for help, abandoning ship. These were inexperienced sailors, and to them it felt like the world was ending and water's coming in, and, you know, it's intense. You could hear on the radio fear just warping their perception and putting them in a bad spot where, you know, if they'd been through it one time, if they'd lived through it one time, they would have known they're gonna survive it and that their other options are worse. So many times, you know, these vessels turn up floating and the crew died, and they could have stayed and they would have been wet and miserable, but they would have lived.
Listen, inexperienced sailors make mistakes, but for that to be replicated 1,600 times? Come on, that's a mystery. Humans are a complex animal, and there's a lot of variation within our species. If you walk down the street and go into a bar or a grocery store, everybody acts different. Some people are loud, some are quiet, some walk fast, some walk slow. But if something scary happens, then boom, in the face of fear, instincts kick in, and we all move in unison. But is that enough to explain how 1,600 crews of stranded sailors all repeated the exact same behavior, time after time after time? Dr. George Everly wrote the book on the human stress response. And you know what's super stressful? Abandoning ship.
What would cause a seasoned professional, a professional sailor,
right,
to lose rationality and abandon ship? Now, we do know extreme stress does allow a part of the brain to hijack your more rational centers. There's a part of the brain called the amygdala.
Yes.
And the amygdala is the home of what we sometimes call the fight or flight response.
Right.
Every once in a while, the amygdala can hijack executive functions. It overrides it, if you will.
Okay.
So we begin to do irrational things, and it begins mildly irrational. If I can drink some salt water, maybe it'll buy me enough time for maybe a miracle. The brain is concerned about survival. It could lead one to do anything in a moment of desperation. I'm dry, that's wet, I'll try it out. So going overboard seems like a really good idea.
Right.
Until you go overboard and find out it's not.
Your kidneys can only handle so much salt in your diet, and salt water from the ocean has 4 times that amount. So drinking salt water basically starts a doomsday clock in your body. The minute you take your first sip, you start dying.
The Marine Corps came up with condition black, the catastrophic failure of your cognitive abilities because of stress. You know, the classic line from The Rime of the Ancient Mariner is water, water everywhere and not a drop to drink. It was a real thing. I think dehydration plays a bigger role. As dehydration gets into people, they start drinking salt water, and eventually they start getting off the boat.
To me, the ghost ships aren't some sort of symptom of a cursed Bermuda Triangle. It's a weather pattern that causes ships to get stuck. And then human instinct causes people to make bad decisions. It's the perfect storm, repeating over and over. Maybe the real mystery isn't some dark external force, but something inside of our own minds. Maybe we're a species of mammal that was never meant to be on the ocean at all. Weird stuff has been happening in the Bermuda Triangle for a long time. Some people think it goes all the way back to Christopher Columbus, who saw strange lights in the sky, and he later lost his flagship to Santa Maria. In the 5 centuries since, countless other ships have vanished in this 500,000 square mile stretch of ocean. But is there really something supernatural happening here? Or is the open ocean just a dangerous place to be?
I'd really like to get into some of these shipwrecks. I'm curious as to whether we can find, you know, some kind of root cause for this pattern of shipwrecks. You know, it could be currents, it could be shallow water in here. This is all the Bahamas, and there's a ton of huge sections of 1 foot, 2 foot sandbanks and all kinds of reefs that aren't even marked today. And some of that might be the explanation, but I think we need to dig a little deeper.
An estimated 3 million shipwrecks litter the ocean bottom, and less than 1% have ever been explored. There are logical explanations for the wrecks around Bermuda, the knife-edge reefs, the high traffic, even hurricanes. But most armchair Bermuda Triangle experts will point to the more mysterious events, like the disappearance of the USS Cyclops. The Cyclops is to shipwrecks what Flight 19 is to plane crashes. In March of 1918, the last transmission the ship sent on its way through the Triangle gave the impression of bright sunny skies, fair weather. And then she disappeared without a trace. No distress call, no sign of wreckage. 309 men vanished.
What do the conditions down there look like?
They're good. I mean, you can definitely see it's definitely snapped in half. There's half of a wreck sitting right on the bottom. It's the stern portion of it. There was a shipping boat that went down in the early 90s.
It's not the Cyclops, but Neil found a much more recent wreck that may offer a clue. A ship that appears to be snapped in half.
You said it was the tail end of Hurricane Andrew?
It was shortly after the hurricane.
They didn't hit
They were bringing
anything out
supplies. And there's nothing to hit out here.
Yeah.
Who knows what happened?
Yeah, who knows?
It took a little while for us to find it, but we fixed a mooring on it and just a temporary chain and line that will follow down.
So if I don't make it back, tell my mom I love her, okay, you guys? Thanks.
I have your Barnets.
Yes. No.
No, come on.
No. None of you get my Barnets.
You can see it's cut right in half. This is a really clean split. It's like it's sheared off. Hard to imagine what was sheared like that. Bermuda just has thousands of wrecks like this. This wreck went down very unexpectedly. Nobody knows quite what happened because something broke the ship's back very here.
I can understand how bad weather can make a ship capsize, or a torpedo or boiler room explosion could knock a hole in the side. But to crack so cleanly in half, how would that happen? And could this be a clue as to how the Cyclops and so many other ships have been lost? Tim Jansen is a physical oceanographer, and he has a scientific theory that might explain all these sudden disappearances. It's something I'd heard rumors about when I was sailing around the world in my 20s. The terrifying rogue wave.
What's your definition of a rogue wave?
The general definition everybody understands, it's a very, very big wave.
Right.
And then there's the sort of like scientific version of that, which doesn't like big or large because it's not very precise.
Okay.
So you measure for a while, you pick the highest 1/3 of the waves, you average that number, and that's the significant wave height. A wave that is twice as big as that, that's formally called a rogue wave.
Right.
So the Drottner wave was the first time that we actually measured a wave that was qualifying as a literal rogue wave, like, 2 times the significant wave height in an already very large wave field.
Where was it? What was
This
it?
was in off the coast of Norway, in the North Sea.
When was that?
This was 1995.
So pretty recently, like they've only had a real scientific proof of any of this.
Totally.
95.
For centuries, the scientific community wrote off the concept of rogue waves as just tall tales told by drunken sailors, exaggerations that are unreliable. Then in the mid-90s, the Drottner oil platform was being battered by some run-of-the-mill 40-foot waves when a monster came out of nowhere. Nearly 90 feet tall, a rogue wave smashed into the Drottner oil platform. Recently, a NASA study determined that at any given time, there are as many as 10 rogue waves happening in the world's oceans.
Most people were sort of like discarding that as sort of like, mermaid type stories.
Right.
A rogue wave is rare, but it's not impossible. Like, 3 in 10,000.
Right.
A 100-foot wave, we see them all the time.
Really?
When I got out of college, I was at a loss. I didn't have a plan. But then an old family friend offered me a job fixing up a yacht and then sailing it around the world. I mean, he was gonna pay me. Well, I knew that opportunity could never come again. So I kept my mouth shut, and he never realized how clueless I was, and I took the job. 3.5 years on the ocean will teach you a lot. But luckily, during all that time, we never hit one of these.
A rogue wave is rare, but it's not impossible. Like, 3 in 10,000.
Right.
A 100-foot wave, we see them all the time.
Really?
Now, I've never myself as an adult, but if I was sailing along and I looked up into the shadow of an 8-story high wave, that might be the time.
If you have a significant wave height of, say, 17, 18 meters, that means that in that wave field, there's going to be waves that are going to be way bigger than that.
Right.
They have to be.
There has to be a wave twice that.
Absolutely. Otherwise, you wouldn't get the average of 17 meters. Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot of water, man.
It is.
Okay, here's where we get to the good part.
You're on your freighter and you're in a storm and a 100-foot wave is coming at you from some unknown direction. What kind of things might happen?
A single large wave could put stresses on a vessel that you normally wouldn't have. You would have like just one very big wave, say, in the middle of the vessel, lifting it up, and you have 2 sides that are unsupported, putting a lot of stress in the middle.
And that's how a 550-foot-long steel ship snaps in half. Just like a baseball bat over Bo Jackson's knee. How cool was Bo Jackson, by the way?
Whether or not boats disappear because of rogue waves, undoubtedly yes.
Right.
How often, we don't know.
Sure.
And whether or not all these vessels are due to rogue waves, I think that question is open.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like the mystery of the sea, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of unknowns out there still.
A curse can be a powerful weapon for those who lack power. A supernatural vow to take revenge beyond the plane we exist in. But the Bermuda Triangle isn't a singular event brought on by magic or an angry voodoo priest. It's something in the collective consciousness, an agreement made by millions of strangers as a way to explain the inexplicable. There are plausible scientific explanations for all these events that have given the Bermuda Triangle its mythical curse status. And I know I'm not smarter than those who believe. I mean, ask my 6th grade teacher, Miss Sadowski, and she'll tell you. So why do so many people believe that it's cursed when science says there's nothing special about this area?
So, Michael, I've been doing some investigation, and I know you've written about this. So, the Bermuda Triangle, what do you think?
Our brains are not well wired to understand randomness. Our brains are wired to find patterns and meaning, hidden forces at work, conspiracies, somebody is behind the scenes pulling the strings, and reproductive success is the key to evolution. So we are the descendants of those who are most likely to find meaningful patterns and infuse those patterns with agency. Let's look at some of these examples here.
When you set out to make a documentary, you're filled with hope that all this cool stuff is gonna happen. You're gonna find out that magic is real, and then you're forced to confront reality. The world K's your B, bro. And you run into that one guy at the bar, and he ruins everything.
We're looking at regional shipwreck data since 2007. And of course, you would expect, the Pacific Ocean and, the Indian Ocean and so on. But here's our triangle.
Right.
There doesn't seem to be a lot going on there, right? In other words, the number of accidents here in the Bermuda Triangle doesn't even reach this level of the Bay of Bengal.
Right.
And you know who knows the statistics? Insurance companies.
Right.
People who have to pay out if there's a crash or some kind of financial loss.
And they don't charge any more to travel through the Bermuda Triangle.
Right.
If there was something happening, the insurance companies would 100 billion trillion % make you pay more. They're not going to lose money. That's not happening. There's no way.
That's right, yeah.
So the reality is crossing the Atlantic anywhere would be just as dangerous as going through the Bermuda Triangle. And yet the name the Bermuda Triangle has terrified generations of non-sailors. But why?
So where does the term Bermuda Triangle come from?
The origin myth begins in the early 1960s with an article by a guy named Vincent Gaddis in the magazine Argosy. Argosy was one of the largest pulp fiction magazines ever published. Fiction. Okay, that's it. Pulp fiction, right?
That's your
first clue, right? And he was basing it on a Fate magazine article.
Yeah.
That referenced this area around Bermuda might be triangular, so he coined it the Bermuda Triangle. And that meme really stuck. And that's where the fantasy and imagination jumps in, especially fantasy writers. Charles Berlitz, for example, he was a very popular writer. He wrote books on Roswell. He jumped right in with the Bermuda Triangle, and that's what kind of put it on the map.
Right.
Some writers go, it goes back to Columbus.
Columbus saw all kinds of crazy, those guys crossing the ocean, they saw lots.
Totally, of course, and what did they know?
Exactly.
Ask any Bermuda Triangle enthusiast, and they'll tell you that Christopher Columbus was the first person to write about mysterious forces in the triangle. Apparently, he saw a series of lights dancing in the sky. This could be the genesis of the triangle's larger-than-life reputation. Every curse, every myth, every mystery has a moment where it began. A singular point in the space-time continuum from which everything else follows. Was the Bermuda Triangle's moment in a place just like this 528 years ago?
Columbus. He was coming into the Caribbean and possibly San Salvador, and he recounted seeing lights hovering in the sky. In some ways, the Bermuda Triangle goes back to that story. That's the first mysterious incident.
Armchair Bermuda Triangle theorists often point to this sighting as evidence of something supernatural. But is there something else going on here?
San Salvador's got indigenous people, the Taino people, that might have had fires on a hillside. And it's possible that Columbus mistook fires on a hillside for something else. So I think I'm gonna go up there and build a fire, and we'll pull out and see what it looks like.
It's not exactly hard science, but my time machine only goes back to 1493, and this is the best we can do.
So people, when they see something they don't understand, they make up a myth. Mythology, superstition, curses are ways of dealing with uncertainty. It's the Bermuda Triangle. Weird stuff happens here. But it could be that Columbus just saw something as simple as this. A fire on a hillside. So we'll take a boat out and look back at this and say, would you have been fooled?
So we're not exactly sure where Columbus was when he saw lights in the sky. And anyone who says they know for sure is full of it. And a sample of 10 articles about Columbus sighting will give you 10 different interpretations of what happened. But that's irrelevant, because even though that event is pointed to as the origin of the Bermuda Triangle's supernatural power, the point isn't to perfectly recreate a well-documented historical event. It's to see if Columbus's mysterious light could have been caused by something extremely unmysterious. That's a word, by the way. That's the fire I said earlier on the hill. Columbus has done the unthinkable. He's crossed the ocean. He's been at sea for months. He was all the way in the Caribbean, even though, he thought he was in Indonesia. And he sees lights floating in the sky. One man's sighting of lights in the sky is another man's proof of the supernatural. But this happened 500 years ago, so it's probably worth asking the question, what did Columbus actually see? Well, his journal says it looked like candlelight rising up and down. Look familiar? When we run out of rational understanding, when we can't explain something to ourselves, we look for causation. Quite possibly Columbus was just so fried, and it had been so long that he couldn't see what was there. He might have seen what is behind me right now. For a lot of people, that's where the Bermuda Triangle myth starts, all the way back to Columbus. He was lost, and something as simple as some indigenous people starting a fire on a hill could be the origin of the Bermuda Triangle. Columbus jotted it in a journal, and then people played the telephone game for 5 centuries. The lights in the sky, the promise of land in the distance, turned into indisputable evidence of the supernatural for those who wanted to believe. Occam's razor says that the simplest explanation is usually correct. And yet, when it comes to catastrophe or death, the terrifying unknown, we rarely accept the low-hanging fruit. If ships disappear, well, maybe it's aliens. When planes disappear, obviously there's a vortex to another dimension.
Hey Sam, it's Nate. We were able to ID that plane we found, but it's not from Flight 19. Turns out it's a different World War II era plane. It's a bummer, but the search continues.
All right, so we didn't solve a 75-year-old mystery in the 2 weeks we had to film this show. But still, when it comes to the Bermuda Triangle, there is no curse. If there was some statistical, measurable impact, then we would see it in insurance rates and maritime practice and in government orders. Believing in a supernatural stretch of ocean is a little like believing in the Easter Bunny. And we want magic in the world. We need it. If some older kid tells your toddler the truth about a certain magical holiday, you get enraged because the world is a better place with magic in it. The curse of the Bermuda Triangle is a sociological construct, not a marine confluence. And in some ways, it speaks to man's need for myth, for gods, for devils, and for the unknown to remain unknowable. Arguing with my 11-year-old is like stepping into an alternate dimension of reality. You have to deal with these urban legends and myths that get passed around school or over video game chats. And you have to take him seriously because he can find a TikTok video that proves what he's saying is right. And I'm wrong again about everything. The internet was supposed to save us with information. All of human knowledge is in your pocket, but it's turned into something else, something we don't even understand.
I'm gonna prove once and for all the Earth is flat.
Did anyone predict flat earthing would make a comeback? On the internet, you can find whatever soothes your soul. You can make the world whatever you want. If you want to live in a world of magic, no problem. If you want to live in a world where aliens walk amongst us, you got it. And if you want to talk about Atlantis, the fabled island of unlimited wealth that sank beneath the sea 12,000 years ago because of Poseidon's curse, well, there's a chat room with your name on it. But Atlantis is different than Slender Man and flat earthing. What gives Atlantis power is that Plato wrote about it in his famous dialogues, the foundation of Western philosophy.
He had quite accurate descriptions.
So it's not just modern-day conspiracy theorists or amateur sleuths.
There's so much evidence of Atlantis.
It's scientists, priests, mathematicians, and academics.
Oh, look at this. Another clue.
They've all found the idea of a real Atlantis fascinating.
Isn't that amazing?
Where is it? What's the spot?
And the search for this perfect island has persisted since Plato wrote about it 2,500 years ago.
It's considered a red zone by governments around the world.
It's going to be very tricky to get a team of archaeologists in there.
It's arguably the most famous curse in the history of the world.
It does weird things to people.
And examining the intersection point between myth and science is what this show is all about. So hell yeah, bro. Let's go look for Atlantis. The island paradise called Atlantis washed away into the ocean 12,000 years ago. This mythical place has been ingrained in popular culture for generations. But just like Aquaman, there's an origin story.
Plato described in great detail Atlantis. The landscape of the islands and the mountains and the sea. And for a long time, people have thought it was here in the Azores.
We're going down the internet wormhole, following Plato's clues and taking cues from those who searched before us. Is there any evidence that Atlantis was a real place? Many people on the internet are excited about what they say is evidence of an ancient seafaring culture lying on the ocean floor, right here in the Azores. They believe this could be where Atlantis washed away into the sea.
We're gonna do some diving on some ancient seafaring civilizations. This is where they would anchor. So we're gonna go see what we see.
Geographically, some believe the Azores matches with Plato's description. He said you go through the Pillars of Hercules, which is the gateway from the Med into the Atlantic, or what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. But then out in the Atlantic somewhere lies the island of Atlantis.
So there were a lot of old anchors down there. Some as maybe old as 16th, 15th century. But nothing was old enough to be in the Atlantean era. So we'll keep looking.
In Plato's texts, Timaeus and Critias, written in the 4th century BC, he describes an island of limitless wealth that was built by the Greek god Poseidon. Now, one of the clear signifiers of Atlantis was that it was built in these great concentric circles. There were 3 giant rings of land and 3 rings of water, and in the middle of all that was a temple that had walls of silver and gold and a pillar inscribed with commands from Poseidon. Now on the pillar were mighty curses to be invoked on those who went against the will of the gods. So when the Atlanteans eventually fell from grace, Zeus and Poseidon were rightfully pissed, and they caused the entire island to be swallowed up by earthquakes and floods, and it sank into the sea.
So Atlantis exists as a myth, you know, as an allegory, but Plato insists that Atlantis is real, repeatedly, and that it was 10,000 years ago or 9,000 years ago. That's a long time for accuracy if you're Plato. I gotta say, he's not doing a lot of hydrocarbon dating. I'm skeptical of Plato's accuracy on that assessment, but he insists it's real.
Now that's the question that's caused a lot of debate in the last, 2,500 years. Most scholars think that Plato invented Atlantis as a way to teach people about morality. But others believe that the island could have been inspired by an actual place or several different places. I'm going to investigate whether there's any scientific evidence that Atlantis truly existed. Because if there is, it could be found.
Existem mais de 100 estruturas arqueológicas piramidais. As pessoas pensavam que eram amontoados de pedras para arrumar, limpar as propriedades.
Nuno Ribeiro is an archaeologist, and he thinks these piles of rocks found on Pico Island in the Azores are evidence of a lost seafaring culture.
Foi realizado estudo arqueoastronómico e a orientação das estruturas. E percebe-se claramente que existe uma preocupação. Elas estão alinhadas, estas estruturas estão alinhadas para o solstício de verão. E algumas com câmaras interiores.
So there's things inside of these pyramids?
Yes. It's a chamber. It means the uterus.
Oh, right, like a uterus or a womb.
Yes.
The womb of a woman,
yes.
right?
Yes. Neste sítio nós temos, havia aqui mais de 1 metro de sedimentos de cinzas e com ossos, por isso não é local de viver, mas sim de culto.
So maybe like a special place for rituals or doing a ceremony of some kind, or religion or whatever.
It's typical in the prehistory.
If this is that old, that's crazy. Like,
it's fantastic.
Very fantastic, yes. Yeah.
But when it comes to groundbreaking theories, by definition, you court controversy. And Nuno believes that the Portuguese government may be seeking to discredit his findings.
So you have these artifacts, and you are going to test them?
Yeah. A nós arqueólogos compete-nos provar, fazer as datações. Mas para isso também precisamos de apoio do governo.
Why does he think the government resists?
Nacionalismo.
Nationalism.
Nuno claims that he initially had support from the local authorities to research these structures, but then the government in Lisbon intervened and shut him down.
So, in your opinion, how old are these pyramids?
Certamente terá mais de 2.000 anos. Maybe more. Much more.
What sort of things did they find in there?
Pontas de seta em metal e em pedra, ossos.
The arrowheads, what were they made of?
Iron.
Iron.
Yes.
And would they find iron here?
Nope.
There's no iron on them, so they came from somewhere.
No. Yes.
Probably that shows signs of a seafaring people came out of the Med through the pillars of Heracles.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Starting to sound like Atlantis to me.
Plato's utopian society called Atlantis is said to have been lost to the world 12,000 years ago. Now, is it possible that this mythical city may actually be real? Well, an internet search for the answers may point you in the direction of the Azores, an archipelago in the mid-Atlantic controlled by Portugal. But their mysterious ruins have sparked a heated debate. The Portuguese government did an official archaeological investigation, and they concluded there was no evidence of settlements older than 600 years. But one archaeologist, Nuno Ribeiro, thinks someone else inhabited the Azores long before that. He's brought me to another island, just east of the structures we saw in Pico, to try and prove it.
Isso é uma estrutura pré-histórica com corredor.
Oh, wow. Wow.
You see the stones?
The arch.
The top?
Yeah.
Yes.
This is 100% for sure pre-Roman, this structure.
They are Bronze Age or maybe old?
I think it's more old.
So this structure proves that there were people here before the Portuguese came.
Yes.
Although not everyone agrees with Nuno's theory, if there was in fact a mysterious people that lived here millennia ago, is there any evidence that they could be connected to the story of Atlantis?
There.
Yes.
What? What is this? What is it the symbol for?
É círculo concêntrico com outro círculo. Em princípio, representa o Sol. Para alguns está relacionado com a Atlântida.
It's the symbol that some people think is Atlantis.
Yes. Todas as lendas têm um fundamento, um princípio que deu origem a qualquer coisa.
Yeah, I mean, potentially there could be a whole, civilization that was in these islands.
Yes. The archaeologists at Lisbon University visit this area and said there is nothing in this place.
Oh, really?
It's not important. It's
Right.
recent.
Wow.
But this rock art, I am sure, is old.
While the theory of a lost civilization here is pretty compelling, there are a lot of competing theories out there, and we can't just focus on the Azores.
We've found a lot of interesting stuff here, but really, if we're gonna test this idea of Atlantis, we have to do a more critical breakdown of what Plato wrote about Atlantis. And luckily for us, we found a guy in Morocco who has done a ton of statistical research about Plato's writings about Atlantis. So we're gonna go to Morocco and we'll have the real clues. Hey guys, pack up. We're going to Africa. No?
Yeah, now. Over 2,000 years ago, Plato wrote about a mythical island that sank beneath the waves, and people have been obsessed with finding it ever since. Is their search futile, or could the fabled city actually be real? Following clues from a few of my chat room buddies, and also a real lead from a German scientist, Sebastian Hubner, we're going to Morocco.
It's really refreshing and pleasant.
When Plato wrote about Atlantis, he spent an inordinate amount of words describing the geographical features of the fabled island. Some call them clues.
Sebastian
Huebner's late brother Michael developed a sophisticated computer program that attempted to find Atlantis by using an algorithm to analyze Plato's text. Sebastian stepped in to help.
Thinking Atlantis is a real place.
There is a country from which all the information he used for creating the myth stems from.
Right.
The myth for him was not a fairy tale. It was a means to communicate true things to the people. And he had quite accurate descriptions.
Yeah.
My brother developed a quite sophisticated method to analyze the text of Plato in order to generate a location hypothesis of that country that Plato had in mind.
So tell me how the analysis of the text worked.
You can extract from the text all kinds of features and put them into an algorithm that maps these features onto the surface of the Earth. And then you can compute a probability of the location of that country Plato had in mind.
Do you want to show me the program and show me how it worked as best you can?
You have now a list of about 51 of these features.
Oh, wow.
In Plato's text, he gives 51 very specific details about Atlantis. Large mountains to the north, elephants are nearby. So what Michael Huebner did is try to assign a yes or no to each feature, in relation to whether it could have existed at a modern-day location. This is with the assumption that Plato is basing Atlantis on one place and not multiple locations. For example, is it likely that someone saw elephants on the northwestern coast of Africa? Yeah. In the Azores? Not likely.
When you have a look at these features, the area, so it's already highlighted. It's here now in green.
Yeah. Okay, so what if you click all of these now? What happens if you just hit every single one on there?
Now it highlights this particular region, and the region measures 200 by 200 kilometers roughly. It cannot be elsewhere because I have here a certain probability that it is here, and it's about 1 to 10 million that it is by chance. So it is a hard result.
So you're killing me here. Where is it? What's the spot? This is like a Hitchcock film. You're going to draw this out, aren't you?
Yeah, the name is called Sus Mazar region in Morocco.
Well, so when you went there, what did you find?
Plato said Atlantis was constructed with red, black, and white rocks. It's actually the first thing that you see when you go there.
So do you think you found the city that Plato was thinking of?
Yes, it's the only place where it can be.
Whew.
All right.
Here we are.
Wow.
Interesting, very interesting.
A German computer specialist created a probability map using Plato's text. His goal, with the help of his brother, was to find the most likely location where Atlantis would be. According to Huebner's algorithm, there's a 99.9% chance that Atlantis is located in an area of Morocco known as the Sus Massa Plain. Now that's if it's real, and admittedly that's a pretty big if. When I told my buddy I was heading to Morocco to look for Atlantis, he made fun of me. But then after thinking about it for about 12 seconds, he said, wait, I want to come, man.
Whew.
All right.
Wow. So this is it.
Yeah, look at this.
Eric Drummond flew in to meet me. He's a world-class geologist, and he'd always wanted to see the Sus Massa Plain. And since we're on Nat Geo's dime, I said, dude, have an extra slow gin fizz on the flight. We gotta stay loose, we gotta stay flexible if we're gonna find evidence that matches Plato's accounts of what happened to Atlantis.
You notice these beds that are coming up from the ocean are steeply dipping to the south.
Right.
And they're cutting in to the formation there.
Okay.
That's what's called an angular unconformity.
Okay.
Okay, so there was a change in deposition there. And so
Right.
something big happened. There was a big tectonic event that tilted these beds.
With some giant, incredible, apocryphal seismic activity.
In Plato's account of the destruction of Atlantis, after violent earthquakes and floods, the entire island sank into the depths of the sea.
The other interesting feature is that you have resistant beds, which are forming the ridges.
Okay.
And then you've got some softer beds, and there's forming caves in there. It looks like they may be enhanced by human activity.
Plato wrote that Atlantis had a complement of 1,200 ships. They would have had to dock somewhere.
You can look at the surrounding point. This is about the only beach around here. So if you were out fishing and you were in trouble, you'd land your boat here, you'd pull it up as far as you could, you'd seek shelter.
So if the Atlantis had a seafaring, navy, they might have been based here.
Yep.
One of the signifiers for Atlantis was red, white, and black rock. Mm-hmm. And I see some of that here.
Yes. The description of black, red, and white. Your black rocks out in the sea there.
Yeah.
Okay, your red right above us, this conglomerate. And then you see a little pinch out of white marl.
Right, way up there. That's the white.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things we're looking for.
Another clue.
Cool.
The limestone cliffs that form the coastline are breathtaking. It's crazy to think that these rocks are made entirely of things that were once alive, things that died and sank to the bottom of the ocean, only to return as rock. And then there's the people who met their end on the open water, the great explorers who left their old world in pursuit of treasure, pursuit of fame, pursuit of the unknown. As I ride on this bus further into the Susmasa Plain, I find myself thinking about just the lengths that men go to venture into the unknown. Just for the sake of it? Mankind's insatiable curiosity, it's part of us. It's part of what led us to unprecedented evolutionary success, but it can also lead to our own destruction. And so here I am, on the other side of the world, and my wife and my son and dog are going on without me. I'm searching for something that at first I didn't even believe existed. Is that weird? Or is it just human nature? It's weird, right?
Now, here's a serious question.
Okay.
Have you ever had gold fever or seen it?
Oh yeah, I've had bad cases of gold fever.
What does it do to you?
It does weird things to people. For me, it just possesses me. It does really strange things to people. And you put the gold ahead of human life.
Human life, yeah.
Yeah.
Or your own life.
Or your own life or others around you.
Yeah, it's like, we're built to seek things, not have things. You want what you have to pursue. You don't want what you have. Yeah, yes. I feel like there's a part of the Atlantis myth that has treasure hunter element to it.
Yeah.
There's an intersection of greed and myth and fantasy, and it's sort of wild.
Now, after spending a couple of months in the Atlantis wormhole, reading Plato, pondering the ancients, now part of me wants Atlantis to be real. Now maybe it's just contrariness, or maybe I'm being seduced by the legend. But now, as we arrive a few miles inland from the rocky cliffs of the Susmasa coast, we find drastically different terrain. It's disappointing for a hopeful Atlantis seeker.
This guy, Sebastian Hubner, and his brother Michael did this high-end statistical probability map. And, the numbers say Atlantis was in this area up in these mountains that are somewhere in the fog in front of us.
My question is, Atlantis was surrounded by water. I don't see any water. Was there water in this area at some point?
To verify that, we can drill down into the soil and take some soil samples.
Okay.
Look, here comes our drill rig.
Let's go back out of the way.
Number one, we're looking for organic material, a reddish-brown soil. Number two, if we intersect an old stream channel.
Okay.
The third thing we'd be looking for is a thing called caliche. It's a natural cement.
Okay.
And it forms as a result of fluctuating groundwater levels.
Eric estimates that the surface layer from the days of Atlantis would now be buried 5 to 10 feet underground. By digging down to that layer, we can get a clear picture of what this area might have looked like 12,000 years ago. For the Huebner brothers' theory to have any credibility, we're going to need to see some signs that this desert was abundant with fresh water, because Plato wrote of fertile plains around the entire island.
So what I'm doing here is just making a boring log out of this.
Maybe we should make an exciting log out of it. What do you think? Really good. Come on.
Getting the geology humor.
The drilling rig has reached 8 feet down. This is the layer of soil dating back an estimated 12,000 years to the time Plato said Atlantis existed. But Eric knows we need to find a rock-solid layer of dirt to show that there was water here at that time.
It's starting to hit the light color though. Sam, I think that's gonna be good. Now we're getting into a light material.
So what did we reach here? What do we think this is?
We found the caliche layer I was talking about.
Right.
And that's the cemented calcium carbonate zone, and that's caused by fluctuating groundwater back around 5 to 12,000 years ago.
So there was enough groundwater that it would have meant a green Sahara.
Absolutely.
Which would have meant trees and grass, lakes, streams.
Exactly.
Anything 5,000 years ago and deeper, this was a green, verdant valley.
Yes. We found another clue.
My buddy Eric Drummond has used some of the core samples we took in the Souss Plain in Morocco to repaint what this region might have looked like during the time Plato says Atlantis existed, 12,000 years ago. So picture the Sahara Desert, but totally transformed, packed with hippos and elephants, giraffes at the watering holes grazing on lush grass. This is the Green Sahara theory.
Hey, Sam, I want to show you something here.
Okay.
Eric and I take the map of the Green Sahara as it was 12,000 years ago and lay it over the present-day satellite map. This entire area would have had fertile plains as Atlantis was said to have. Combining that with the Huebner brothers' probability map, we can now cruise along the western desert and look for anything that stands out.
Take a look at this structure here. Okay, right here, you're seeing it come in.
Yeah.
And Eric immediately navigates us to a geological structure that definitely does just that.
Isn't that amazing?
What is that?
It's called the Richat structure. That thing is about 25 miles in diameter.
How did you hear about it?
I'd done a little research on it.
Wow.
The formation was actually formed by a volcanic plug underneath it, pushing upwards on strata, and it formed these concentric circles where the ridges are the more resistant rock and the valleys are the less resistant.
Right, and so we've got 2 rings of earth and possibly 3 rings that could have been filled with water.
We have evidence of that too. See this white area here?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's called a playa lake.
A playa lake?
Mm-hmm. So it's the remains of an ancient lake bed.
Okay.
And it's known that there were freshwater fossils there found.
So there was fresh water.
There was fresh water within there.
There was a lake in
Yes.
a very different Africa than is there today. Wow. So there was 3 rings of water and 2 rings of earth.
I mean, look at these rings. It's pretty sweet.
And so it's considerably inland.
Yeah.
It would not have been inundated by any sea level rise because it's too far inland, it's too high in elevation. But maybe we could have an inland sea there. 25 miles across is pretty damn big.
Yeah.
This would seem to fit the bill for an inspiration for Atlantis.
It's amazing to think that that is the exact structure Plato's describing.
Yeah, it seems to fit the bill.
Or it could be one of the inspiration points for Atlantis. He may be borrowing elements from different places.
Right.
But there's nothing in the world like that, is there?
No, it's very unique, I think. So
that's in Mauritania, right?
Yeah.
Although the Richat is located over 700 miles south of the Susmasa Plain, which is where Hubner's model pinpoints Atlantis, this lead is just too intriguing to ignore. This mysterious structure sits in the country of Mauritania. If you travel east and beyond the Richat, it turns into hundreds of square miles of desert, no man's land. No roads, no towns listed on the map. It's in the middle of nowhere. And of course, when it comes to Atlantis, the Richat has long been scouted out by plenty of internet sleuths. But almost no one from the Western world has ever been there because of the possibility of getting kidnapped or beheaded. Governments around the world warn against visiting. This obviously serves as a deterrent for most Atlantis seekers.
Josh, how are you, man?
My pleasure.
Josh Sigurdsson is one of the very few Atlantis enthusiasts who risked his life to investigate the Richat structure, or the Richat, or the Richat. That doesn't sound right. Honestly, I don't know. Does anyone really know how to pronounce anything? Just lay off.
First of all, tell me how you got into this. How did this get started for you?
Well, I heard a lot of theories about this Richat structure in Africa, and apart from a couple people over the years, no one really documented the place. No one actually went there on the ground, and I felt if no one else is going to do it, I might as well do it.
Do you have a background in archaeology, or was there just what the hell kind of thing?
I just have a passion for it. I always have had a passion for the idea of this place they call Atlantis.
So you went to the Richat structure. When was this, by the way? When did you go?
This was in May 2019.
May 2019, so recently.
They keep taking my passport every hour or so. I ended up taking a series of trains, buses, boats, and hitchhiking across the Western Sahara until I got to Mauritania. It's a disputed country. It's a very volatile region. It's considered a red zone by many governments around the world.
Why is Mauritania on the red list?
There have been quite a few kidnappings over the years. There have been beheadings, and the weather is a factor there as well. 120, 130 sometimes.
Right.
The biggest issue for me would have been crossing the border from Western Sahara into Mauritania, as there's still an active minefield there. There's a no man's land you must cross where there's exploded vehicles everywhere you look. The driver who brought us there, we paid him $150 to bring us across a minefield, and he's white-knuckling all the way.
So how far down in was the Richat structure?
Richat is somewhere around central Mauritania, and you basically have to go over sand dunes because there's no more road. It's very evident once you get there because the first thing you see is just the circular ridge of a massive structure.
What does it look like when you're out there in it?
It almost looks as though the whole ground, all soil, was ripped away from the ground. It's very barren. There's salt everywhere.
What do you think that is from?
Well, one could theorize that the ocean once reached the structure. I tasted the salt to ensure that it actually was salt. That's salt. That's salt. I bought this from a nomad at the edge of the Richat structure.
Right.
It's very typical of the region because there is an interesting pattern that you see around the region.
You know what it looks like to me? I mean, there's the rings, right? That's the symbol for Atlantis. 2 rings of water and 3 rings of land or
Absolutely. And there's evidence of ancients thousands of years ago in that region having that exact same symbology, utilizing this structure at some point in time.
Talking to Josh about the Richat structure, it's problematic. You know, even presuming we can get in there, the danger factor means we can't bring an archaeological team, we can't bring a professor, there's no way anybody can set up a real dig. We need a way in.
The search has shifted along with my feelings. I was a pretty serious skeptic, but now I want to find something. Maybe it's gold fever, the innate treasure hunter in everyone. I've fallen into the Atlantis trap. But who wouldn't want to find a lost utopia?
It seems like going there is not the answer. Maybe there's a way to, look from space.
Excellent thinking, Sam. There is.
This technology is revolutionizing our ability to find things everywhere.
I traveled across the globe, piecing together a combination of scientific data and internet conspiracy theories in an attempt to find any clues to what could have been the inspiration for Plato's cursed island of Atlantis. My research has pointed me in the direction of a geological phenomenon known as the Richat structure. But the Richat is so remote and so dangerous to get to, my investigation almost went unfulfilled. Until I enlisted the help of a person who many consider the modern-day Indiana Jones. Sarah Parkak, space archaeologist.
It's kind of the fun name for using a series of space-based or aerial tools and looking at subtle changes and differences on the Earth's surface. So for example, let's just say you have a buried tomb. Well, we all know, say, going down into our cellar or a wine cellar, right? It's X degrees cooler because it's buried. And so what we do is we look for these subtle heat differences to find voids. And you can clearly see the square outlines, tombs that are just like half a degree cooler, which is pretty awesome. This technology is quite literally revolutionizing archaeology and our ability to find things everywhere.
So we started looking into, where Atlantis could actually be. And you've come across this Richat structure, which you can see from space. Is there anything interesting about the Richat structure as an archaeologist?
Well, it's sort of this semi-enigmatic structure. I'm fascinated by it. We know very little archaeologically about the region. That whole part of Africa is real uncharted territory. There could potentially be some amazing things out there.
Maybe we can find out. What I'm hoping is that you can, bring some of your expertise, and maybe there is something to see, but it just has to be from space. Do you think you could get the team to task a satellite? I've always wanted to task a satellite to something, so is there a chance?
Sure, but we're talking 5,000 to 7,000 square kilometers of area, which is pretty massive, but okay, we're excited to dive in.
We'll see what happens. I can't wait. Sarah will gather thousands of satellite images of the Richat structure and then analyze them, looking for anomalies. It's the same process that helped her uncover over 3,000 lost settlements in Egypt. My poor little treasure-obsessed brain can't help but hope that she finds something that dates back 12,000 years to Plato's Atlantis.
So I'm going to very quickly email you. So initially when we started looking, we weren't really finding anything. We kept looking and looking and looking and nothing was popping out. There's no visible architecture of any kind anywhere. But then, once our eyes got adjusted to the landscape, then hundreds and hundreds of features started popping out, if not thousands. In the heart of the Richat structure are 2 absolutely massive rectangular structures. that look like they have rounded towers at the end. To me, that was one of the most exciting finds. These are pretty major. They're pretty wild, and they're definitely ancient. They're not anything more modern.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so we'll go to the westernmost one. We'll zoom in and zoom in and zoom in. You can actually see the little animal pens. So this could have easily housed more than 100 camels or donkeys. This wouldn't have been a place where you just kind of camp out for a night. They're clearly going to have food. There's going to be trading that goes on. There probably would have been wells there. In fact, previous research reports that were done, they've said, you know, we've been there, we found hand axes from more than 100,000 years ago. We found Neolithic blades, but absolutely no evidence whatsoever until now of any kind of built human structures in and around the Richat structure. But I think the story has changed. These probably date to 8,000 to 5,000 years ago. I'm super, super excited about what we found. It opens up, I think, a chapter of archaeology that archaeologists didn't know was there.
So, is Atlantis real? Did we find it? That's something you have to look into your heart and answer. I know what my 11-year-old thinks. He showed me the website. And don't get me wrong, with the help of my new best friend, the brilliant Sarah Parkak, I'm always down to open a new chapter of archaeology. But the truth about Atlantis is, I think we're on the receiving end of a 1,000-year game of telephone. 2,500 years ago, a philosopher wrote about a cursed island disappearing into the sea. Anyone who could read in Europe from the Renaissance onwards read Plato. And the myth of Atlantis grew. The gold and silver buildings inflamed imaginations. And the legend outgrew the story. People still seek Atlantis.
What it comes down to is this idea that the Atlanteans lost their ability to handle wealth well, and then they started to become corrupt, and that brings the curse.
It's a metaphor. Plato was talking about a people grown prideful, cursed with hubris, and consumed by ambition. People who'd lost touch with their success. Now, does that ring a bell? Any of that sound familiar? Trying to find Atlantis is exactly the wrong thing. It's the wrong lesson. In fact, it's the opposite of what Plato intended. But human nature hasn't changed. And the lesson and the metaphor hold true. The Curse of Atlantis is all too real.
We're not supposed to be here.
You ever have those moments when you step back and you wonder, who convinced you that this was going to be a good time? Well, in this case, it was me. I convinced myself that we should go to Romania and look at the curse of Vlad the Impaler. I thought it could be hilarious, booze it up in Bucharest, hit the clubs, have a few laughs, hear a scary story. But then, you end up freezing in an ancient Transylvanian forest. And no, I didn't get a Groupon for a Romanian folk dance experience. These are real witches, wielding black magic in the same place Vlad the Impaler supposedly had his head chopped off. That's cool, it's all good. I'm sure everything will be just fine. As a writer and explorer, as a citizen of the world, I've seen things that defy understanding. And sometimes, when there's no good explanation, we blame the supernatural. But the truth is, I believe in science.
Taking off.
So what happens if we bring the full light of modern science onto ancient curses? You wind up at a seance in the woods with Romanian witches. You follow a vampire hunter to his place of business. That's what happens.
They said, please, help us. He's not afraid of...
No, he's not.
Good luck. You're gonna need it.
Transylvania. The name conjures it all. Dense pine, impassable, craggy cliffs, thick ground fog. This is the mythic forest of your childhood nightmare. Bran Castle, billed as the last standing relic of a man some call Dracula. The story goes that Romania's bottomless well of tyranny, catastrophe, and overall human misery can all be traced back to one terrifying ruler and his supernatural evil.
Vlad III Basarab, better known as Vlad the Impaler, he was nicknamed Dracula, which means the son of the devil.
Ah, okay. So, have you ever heard of the Curse of Vlad Tepes?
Yeah. He lost his wife, he lost his dynasty, he lost his family, and he signed a document in order to bring a curse down against his enemy, and he promised that he will return. That was his curse, and I will take revenge against those that they betrayed me. He was killed, and his body was buried in a monastery nearby Bucharest. Later on, when they opened the coffin, they never found his body, which is quite creepy.
Yeah, right.
You do start to wonder, what if he's coming back again?
So you'd be worried if you were his enemy, you might be a little nervous. Yeah.
Vlad spent much of his life constructing a fearsome persona. In some ways, his reputation was so extreme that it haunts the entire world.
So one of his tactics was to capture prisoners and then impale them. It's a wooden stick that goes into the rectum.
Gross.
They pull you up and you stay alive like 3 days.
Oh my God, 3 days.
That really terrified his enemy, the Turks. Yeah.
What are some of the other ways you would do it?
Well, setting a fire or poisoning wells.
Wow.
A very bad one, he captured a family, like brothers, and he boiled one of them, and then he forced the rest of the family to eat him.
He sounds like a really nice guy.
When you have your enemy at the gate all the time, you don't have time to make people love you.
Yeah, fascists always say that. Once he took power in 1448, Vlad began a lifelong battle to protect his country from invaders from all sides. Hungarians, rival nobles, but most of all, the ever-expanding, ruthless Ottoman Empire, Vlad's mortal enemy. The other kings and rulers of his time had surrendered, and they all paid tribute, but Vlad fought on, with a sheer hatred that defies description. Perhaps because the Ottomans had kidnapped him as a child, and by the time his father and brother were killed, his hatred had grown so virulent that we still make TV shows about him 600 years later.
Vlad himself, he was right here.
Yeah, right here. He touched these walls.
Amazing.
He used to capture rats and birds, take the skin off, and then impale them in a small wooden stick. And
wow. You know, 600 years ago, there was a real person here. Vlad the Impaler. Looked out his little window. Thought about revenge.
Now this little beauty here can be yours for $7. No one ever lets a curse stand in the way of profit.
There you go.
But the truth is, we're all here because Vlad's fearsome reputation so inflamed imaginations, including an Irish writer named Bram Stoker. Bram never even visited Romania, but he used Vlad's name and legend as the basis for one of the most potent horror symbols of all time. There's no escaping the vampire in pop culture. But the question I have is pretty simple. Is the curse of Vlad real?
Tell me about this letter from Vlad Tepes.
El certifică acest document. Dacă hotărârea lui nu este respectată, toate relele de pe lume, inclusiv pedapsa divină a lui Dumnezeu, se va năpusti asupra acelui care se ocupe însă țara românească.
Kind of a cool way of punctuating requests. You know, hey man, give me a beer or I'm gonna lay your kingdom to waste and your kids are gonna rot in hell for eternity. There you go.
Do you think Vlad's curse has affected Bucharest?
Ba da, știa acestor calamități când ne referim la holeră și ciumă, însă recurența era cel puțin o dată pe generație, holeră sau ciumă. Iar punctul este cel mai important, este numit ciuma lui Caragea din 1813.
Caragea plague, that was the prince who came after Vlad Tepes was killed.
Yes.
Bucharest is already on edge after the mythic Vlad the Impaler has cursed them for all eternity. And then, after years of devastating fires, earthquakes, wars, a ruler appointed by his sworn enemy, the Ottoman Empire, assumes power. And guess what happens next? The palace in the center of Bucharest burns to the ground. That could be a coincidence, or more likely a parting gift from the outgoing administration. But then, people start getting sick. 450 years after the Black Death, Bucharest plunges into an outbreak that must have felt like the zombie apocalypse.
What did they think caused the plague?
Oamenii asociază de o pedapsă divină.
God was punishing them, kind of like a curse. During the plague, where did they put the bodies?
Spre 20.000 de victime, iar cadavrele au fost îngropate într-o groapă comună, în afara orașului, construit din nimic, a rămas un spațiu liber până în secolul 20.
Can we visit those mass graves now? Can you go see where those bodies are buried? Is there a memorial or anything to look at?
Nu există un memorial. Puteți să priviți de la distanță, și-au construit peste. Avem Casa Poporului.
It's totally normal. There's absolutely nothing strange or symbolic about building your parliament on top of a mass grave. But seriously, we should go down there, right?
So we're down here in what's called the Plague Catacombs. You know, just wanted to see for myself these tunnels that were stuffed with bodies during the plague outbreak. Yeah, we're not supposed to be here.
Vlad the Impaler put a written curse on his land. Years after his death, when an Ottoman-appointed prince showed up to claim the throne, all hell broke loose. And it must have felt like the ultimate confirmation of the curse. With coronavirus, people around the world have gotten a glimpse of what a scary outbreak can be like. But statistically, the majority of patients who contract the coronavirus survive. Caraja's plague was totally different. The death rate was more than 50%.
It's got to have felt like the world is ending. The psychic wound, you know, on a city, on a people, on a nation. It's something that you would never get over. And you would pass that fear along to your children.
It's almost like the sheer terror of living through that particular plague left a scar that's been passed down. Many modern Romanians see this outbreak as proof of Vlad's curse. But I wonder, can we find a point where myth and science intersect? Was there something truly anomalous about Curaj's plague?
This is a mathematical model.
Okay.
It's widely used in disease ecology. So we took historical data from the Black Death, the bubonic plague.
Sure.
Would you like to see?
Yeah, please, by all means.
These are spatial representations of people dying all across the city.
Wow.
And then it burns itself out, as epidemics do, and it starts to plateau.
Okay.
So my husband and I have been working on a mathematical model of courageous plague. This was a really terrifying plague.
Wow.
Much more aggressive epidemic. Once it happens, it just, wipes through the city super quickly.
Wow.
But something else is going wrong, too.
Okay.
Some people have looked at these epidemic curves and said, okay, well, there must be what we call pneumonic plagues, and that's when the disease is deep in your lungs, can spread it directly person to person.
Wow.
Then quarantine is established. So you're walking around a city where they had piles of human bodies. There's stories about them raping, stealing, even killing plague victims. Complete societal breakdown.
So all these things may have combined to make this into just a complete hellish
It's a hellish sort of end of days scenario.
Right.
It killed half the city, maybe more, but there hadn't been a plague epidemic anywhere else. As an ecologist, you say, how could that be? What was it?
Wow. Yeah. It's hard to imagine what a family losing nearly 50% its members would feel like. Imagine your own family and pick half. The scar that would leave on a generation. It's something you would never get over.
Curaj's plague could have given the curse a literal grounding and an emphasis that burned it into the minds of Bucharest. But that was hundreds of years ago. Are there any lingering effects today? In the deep, dark woods outside of Bucharest, there's a place called the Witch's Pond. A place where the legacy of the curse shows surprising life. The business of witchcraft in Romania is booming, and Mihaela Minca is the reigning queen. She's a witch, and there are thousands of others just like her. How did I find her? Well, I tied a note to a raven's foot with an eye of newt and the tongue of a bat. Nah, I'm kidding. I hit her up on Instagram. I slid into her DMs.
I'm gonna add that to contacts.
Why is this a special place?
Vlad Tepes a fost sacrificat aici.
He was killed.
Yeah. Cindaleschi cor.
They cut his head off.
Yeah. Avea pact cu diavolul. Noi suntem niște vrăjitoare foarte puternice. Trebuie să plătim diavolii cu mult sânge să ajutăm persoana respectivă.
If I wanted to curse someone or to do black magic, could I pay and you could do a bad spell to them?
Yes, her grandmother killed much people with black magic.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because sunt ritualuri secrete. Nu știu dacă e bine să spunem pe post, nu spunem de ce. Pe ascuns, toți vin la vrăjitoare, dar în secret.
I understand, yeah.
Că în România, diavolul umblă printre oameni. Sunt foarte mulți oameni care se sperie de magia neagră.
Mihaela and the other black magic practitioners offer their services online. $100 and an internet connection, and you can dole out a curse. Just as easily, you could be the subject of one. But the Romanians spend millions of dollars a year on health charms and hexes and love potions. It got to the point where the Romanian government attempted to tax the black market of black magic.
They're not the type of people you want to upset. Now, a group of angry witches in Romania is taking on the government with a unique tax protest.
The witches responded with curses. They threw poisonous mandrake into the Danube. I'm not going to say it's proof about who believes what, but we did see a marked change in the behavior of the highest levels of the Romanian government. They not only backed down, but also wore purple clothing, as purple is the color that protects from curses. In this case, black magic proved pretty effective.
So that was pretty intense. I'll say this, if Mahela cursed you, I think you'd wonder. Her conviction was so compelling. I think you'd think about it in your dark moments. Just in case.
A curse works when people believe it works. And the prevalence of witchcraft means that a lot of folks are at least open to the idea. But how deep does it go? How dark can it get? Is there a big difference between the Western attitudes about witchcraft or the supernatural and the attitudes of multi-generational Romanians?
Ovidiu.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi, how are you? Sam.
Ovidiu. Nice to meet you.
Ovidiu, nice to meet you. Yeah, thanks.
A local journalist has offered to help me get access to a small village called Merotino de Sus, where there's a man who fights the ghosts of Romanian superstition. But this is something no one in town wants exposed because there was an avalanche of blowback before. So our source is understandably wary.
We found out about this guy, Mircea Mitrică, it's his name. He doesn't want us to go at his house. He doesn't want to be seen by the neighbors. We're gonna go with him at his goat fold, you know, where he keeps the goats.
Sounds great.
I love a good goat fold.
And he's gonna talk to us there.
We'll be very low profile.
You gotta be careful how you approach. It's a total different situation in the countryside.
Is he okay doing camera work? He's okay to be filmed?
So it seems.
So, we gotta be a little careful about how we do this. This guy's gonna be real swirly. And I don't want to spook him, so keep the cameras down and just, you know, low profile, incognito, you know, real slick. That's what I want you to be. Yeah. Is that him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ce faceți, nea Mircea?
Luăm seama după bombardire.
Cum sunteți? Stați-vă să vi-l prezint și pe Sam. El nu vorbește română.
Salut. Bună, Sam. Mircea. You come with us? Is that him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Să vi-l prezint și pe Sam. El nu vorbește română. Ce faceți, nea Mircea?
Salut. Bună, Sam. Mircea, you come with us?
Haideți.
Believing in giving money to witches is one thing. Even in the US, we give $2 billion a year to psychics. And everyone reads their horoscope mostly because the stakes are low. You still have to go to work when Saturn is in ascendance or the moon is in retrograde, right? But it feels like there's something darker and more profound at work here in Romania. Vlad the Impaler's curse drove its hooks into the national psyche 6 centuries ago. How dark does it get?
E nume frică. Aici e român. Când am fost la Toma Petre, la mormânt, că a venit vecina de alături, bă, hai că moare fata. Îi se moaie picioare și cade jos. Cum unchiul Petre s-a făcut Moroi.
What is a Moroi? Depends on which village you live in. To some, it's a simple ghost. In other places, it's much more like the familiar vampire feeding on the blood of the living. In Murch's village, the Moroi is still a member of the genus and species, Undead Supernaturalis. But here, the Moroi is an invisible phantom who leaves the grave and infests the body of a living relative.
How did he know it was Moroi?
Yeah, they told him it's because of the Moroi. And they said, please help us, you know.
Run.
Păi mergem la noapte. Și la 12 noaptea am plecat în cimitir. 3 lanterne noi ca să lumine. Ne-am dus, am dat placa la o parte, le-am dat capacul la o parte. Eu am intrat înăuntru. Eu l-am găsit cu sânge proaspăt pe partea asta. I-am desfăcut coasta, am luat inima, am luat-o de acolo, am făcut focul, am omorât-o.
Does that kill the Moroi?
Bă, ne-am dus acasă la ei, am făcut tot ce ai cu apă, am stricurat-o și i-am dat fetei să bea. Și a doua zi la 12 a venit pe picioare și m-a chemat că să facem un grătar.
Wow, so just 2 days and she's cured.
Fata de atunci și acum să vezi cum era, acum tot așa e mare, volumoasă. Hey.
How did you first learn about Moroi?
Noi, ca copil, aveam de 5 ani, că am văzut cum a făcut omul ăla.
When I was 5, I slept with a nightlight.
El îmi spunea, bătrânul ăla, văd că ai curaj, dar să n-ai treabă cu inima, să ai inima sănătoasă.
Because he's not afraid.
No, he's not.
Yeah, I can tell. What's amazing is the elders were doing this, and Mircea was a 5-year-old and was brave enough to go witness and be part of it. Just hard to imagine my kid going into graves and exhume the body and get the heart. But if you grew up out here, you'd have a much different understanding of death.
There's no question that Romania is still steeped in mysticism and myth. Add the curse of a vengeful Vlad to the mix, and you've got yourself an all-you-can-eat buffet of supernatural belief sweeping the countryside. But what about here, in Bucharest? On the surface, a modern-day metropolis, bright lights, cafes, people's noses buried in virtual realities on a 5-inch screen.
Thank you.
This isn't the hangout spot for vampire hunters. There's no witches' cauldrons boiling in the kitchen. This is an entire generation of post-communist Romanians. They grew up with search engines in their pockets. Do they believe they're destined for darkness?
Hai că mai rezist. Doar cu tine.
Adrian.
Hi.
How you doing, man?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Here with my
Hi.
friends.
I'm Maria. Nice to meet you.
Andrew.
Andrew, nice to meet you.
We're having a beer. Would you like one?
Yeah, I'll be here, sure, man. Thank you.
There you go.
Adrian and his friends were born after the fall of Ceausescu's totalitarian regime. It was one of the most oppressive in the entire Soviet Union. So what do the kids these days think about a 600-year-old legend?
Is Romania cursed?
Well, if we look at the, last 500 years,
yeah,
the wars, the plagues, fires that destroyed cities, the floods, yeah, it was something there, and it's sort of still affecting.
You believe it?
If you ask me, yeah, we're cursed.
People say this is in our blood.
You don't hear that every day. Unless you live in Romania. So, could the blood of modern-day Romanians hold evidence of a curse? Could there be some sort of profound truth in a toothless cliché? Could centuries of upheaval and trauma leave effects we could measure in the blood? Remember 25 minutes ago when I told you I was going to map the intersection of science and myth? Yeah, well, here comes the science part. Vlad the Impaler, the name, the reputation, so fearsome we still talk about it 600 years later. He was the ultimate medieval fearmonger, and he fought to protect his country from enemies, domestic and foreign, by skewering tens of thousands of humans at a time. Before his death, he issued a written curse, and in the 6 centuries since, one horrible tragedy after the next has been blamed on Vlad's infamous letter. So I wonder, could a curse somehow manifest in the people? What I mean is, could it be hiding in their DNA?
This idea that you're talking about is a psychological theory referred to as transgenerational trauma.
Transgenerational trauma.
And it's basically the idea that the generation that experiences the trauma can pass it on to future generations. There would be some kind of long-term effect.
Right, so just massive trauma can change your genes.
Right, and the effects can be multi-generational. Transgenerational trauma has been documented in children of Holocaust survivors or the descendants of slaves and in Native Americans, survivors of famine. Their offspring, many years later, were shown to have increased obesity, schizophrenia, diabetes, showing that there was a transgenerational trauma altered by epigenetic.
Right. Wow.
Epigenetics is basically the study of how genes are turned on or off. It involves chemical modifications to DNA and the proteins associated with DNA. And it responds to both internal stimuli and external stimuli.
So you're saying like environmental factors can change your DNA?
Yeah, but there has to be some pretty, long-lasting trauma that would have enough time for the body to reprogram itself.
So for decades, we thought we were stuck with the genes we were born with. And now, you're telling me that genes can change due to stress? Sounds like we're gonna have to change some textbooks.
So I was in Romania, and I started to wonder if an area had a history of like terrible trauma. It went back into the Middle Ages, just horrible thing after horrible thing, living in constant fear. Could there be something you'd see in the present day people?
Yes, and it could be positive, right? So far we're only talking about negative predisposition, but maybe you have a good predisposition.
So this theory of mine, this idea that a country that's had hundreds of years of trauma, the people who live there would be more resilient to trauma, is feasible.
Right, and that could be an epigenetic alteration of stress genes. There's no question what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
It's how I live my life.
For an epigenetic alteration to occur in their stress genes, Romanians would have to be subject to continuous trauma throughout their history. But have they? Look at the map. Romania is consistently caught in a vice between rival powers. Between Europe and the Mongols, between the Ottoman Turks and the Christian nation, all the way up to Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union and the fall of the Iron Curtain. So is there any evidence that Romania's past has led to some kind of resilience or survival advantage? What do the locals think?
I was 13 when we had the so-called revolution. It was not easy to get food. We had to manage, but
it's in your blood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Eu cu asta? Nu vrei ciorbă? Îmi place mult șobolul. Oamenii nu sunt prea curajoși. Oamenii nu se sperie de ceea ce le oferă natura. Cei când s-au încercat ea să se apere cu drujba. Nu se sperie, sunt prea curajoși ca să...
It's just one disaster after the next. But I think it makes us stronger.
A ferry disaster in 1989 is just one of the horrible events often attributed to Vlad the Impaler's curse. But this one has something pretty strange about it.
We've got a survivor of that accident, and I'm fascinated to talk to him because foreign tourists died. There were 31 survivors, and they were all Romanian. Only the Romanians survived. Be interesting.
Tragedy happens every day, all over the world. It hides around every corner, reminding us that our lives are more precarious than we'd like to admit. But as I've looked into the long history of Romanian tragedies sometimes attributed to Vlad the Impaler's curse, I start to wonder.
Nu se sperie de fantome, sunt prea curajoși.
People say this is in our blood.
That could be an epigenetic alteration of stress genes.
Could some Romanians have inherited a unique gift? The ability to process stress and fear better than the rest of us?
So we're here at the Danube where there was a catastrophic ferry accident in '89, and we've got a survivor of that accident, Theodore. And I'm fascinated to talk to him because foreign tourists died.
There were 31 survivors, and they were all Romanian.
Only the Romanians survived. Be interesting.
Era ceață. Întârziat un pic vaporul. A plecat cu o întârziere de 10 minute către destinația, către locația Grindu. La 10 minute de la port erau niște vase mari în ancoră, cargouri. Unui vapor mare venea vasul bulgăresc în amonte. Având o forță foarte mare, n-a avut cum să evite.
You could see the boat coming and you knew what was going to happen. What went through your mind? What were you thinking about during those moments?
Și am zis, m-am gândit că dacă ne lovește, ne întoarce. Nu m-am gândit că o să ne ia pe brusc, să ne răstoarne. Cam de aici ne-a luat pe noi și se înclina. Eu am văzut că se înclină vasul, am coborât pe ăla bulgăresc.
Under the hull?
Nici m-am mutat.
Tell me about your mind. What was going through your mind?
Când e vorba de un echilibru, așa, mă stăpânesc.
Were you very scared?
Tras atenția că ceva nu este în regulă. Nu trebuia să audă așa ceva acolo.
Era frică?
Nu.
Crazy, man. Wow.
M-am gândit că nu se poate întâmpla nimic, am fost mai calm.
Did you know anybody that didn't make it? Did you know them?
Am avut o soră de gradul 1, verișori. Toți acolo suntem cunoștinți, prieteni.
Wow. And they didn't make it.
Theodore felt no fear. He just did what he had to do to keep himself alive. But is this just a badass anecdote of a Romanian with ice-cold blood in his veins? Could his incredible survival instincts be the result of epigenetics? Now, one anecdote doesn't make a pattern. But if you keep looking, maybe you surprise yourself.
You there?
Yeah, it should be here, actually.
You ready? Let's go find it.
Yeah, sure.
Don't get hit.
We got the address for a woman named Aurelia Grigore. She lives in an old communist housing block. Ceausescu's reign of terror wasn't the only thing she survived. She's a flight attendant, and she apparently shares Theodore's knack for survival against all odds.
There you go.
Pretty sure that's a good omen.
Yeah, it should be this way.
All right.
place.
Yeah.
Da?
Aurelia, hi. Sam.
Hi.
We've heard about you and we wanted to maybe just hear some stories about the things you've been through. Is it okay? We can come in?
I finally tracked down this woman who has one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard. And it's gonna blow your mind. Seriously. In Romania, people feel tragedies in their blood. And throughout their history, they've nearly drowned in it. Ever since the reign of Vlad Tepes, when he was boiling people alive and building forests out of men impaled on wooden spikes, Romania just can't seem to catch a break. But could this have caused an inadvertent strength, a unique ability to handle tragedy and trauma and survive disaster?
Only 4, it's okay.
It's great.
I was flying from Bucharest to Nouadhibou. It was a long flight, and I was pregnant with my boy.
Ah.
After a lot of hours, I don't remember how many hours, I looked at the window. I saw no light, nothing. Only the waves. I thought, it's water, we are in water.
You crash.
Yes. I saw the plane was broken.
Oh my God.
I thought, I have to choose the easiest of this, that. The first one, because of the sharks. All the sharks went. Yes, yes.
There were sharks everywhere.
Yes, yes. I don't know to swim. The other one, together with the plane. The engine is going, maybe explosion, yes. I chose to stay with the plane.
Were you very scared?
No.
Not even a little bit scared?
No.
Why
no.
not?
I don't know.
Much like Theodore on the ferry, Aurelia describes having an almost eerie calm, when most people would panic themselves into making a bad decision. But if you're a flight attendant in a cursed land, plane crashes can come in bunches.
The second one in 1986. At the landing, it was too steep.
Too steep?
Yes,
You're smashing down.
Yes,
right.
yes.
Did you think, I can't believe it's happening again?
I thought I was black cat. If I am on board, something is going to be wrong. This was very difficult for me because my colleagues died. And I'm okay. What happened?
What I think is so interesting is you were never afraid.
You have to survive, you know, and you have no time to write that. No, you have no time.
It's crazy. When you go into a stressful situation, your body floods with chemicals. The amygdala is this little almond-shaped organ and releases these stress hormones. It's fight or flight, it's adrenaline dumps, we've all heard about it. And, you know, some people don't handle it well at all. I had a friend, he got mugged, and he was trying to dial 911, and he dialed 411 over and over and over again. But we've seen that there's a Romanian strength, there's a Romanian ability to metabolize stress hormones. And maybe there's more to it. Maybe it has a genetic component.
It's sort of mind-blowing to think the trauma we experience in our lives today could have genetic implications on our grandchildren's grandchildren. But new science says that it's possible that epigenetics allows future generations to develop coping mechanisms for trauma they've never even been through. So my theory is kind of simple. Some Romanians have been both cursed and given a gift from the past, and they row against the tide of history into the future.
So cortisol is a hormone, and it's released essentially by your adrenal glands.
Right. Once that cortisol is elevated, that's what we try to measure in looking at the stress response.
Right.
And it's all about coping. And some people cope really well. They're able to keep going.
So they've just gotten better at coping with the cortisol,
Yes.
with the stress.
Absolutely. They've gotten better at it.
So that would kind of go to my pet theory that the Romanians, who've had this history of living under incredible stress with all these terrible dictatorships, would have coping mechanisms, possibly.
Possibly. With the human brain, we have this remarkable ability to be able to adjust and adapt to situations. So if you think of it in that context, I think you're really onto something.
A medieval prince's desperate attempts to keep control of his kingdom led him to commit such atrocities that his reputation and name have inflamed imaginations for 600 years. A cursed country, the myth of Dracula, plagues and fires and tyranny, and a centuries-long chain of human misery. Romania is cursed, not by a vampire, but by geography and history, by a fearsome ruler. But Romanians survive and flourish in the face of catastrophe. And emerging science shows how coping with trauma can be passed down in the form of epigenetics. Could there be a connection? I can't say for sure. From where I'm sitting, Vlad the Impaler did curse Romania. And the proof is written in blood. You see this little guy? It's a shrimp. It's friendly, right? Not cute necessarily, but harmless. Just wait. According to author Mike Tidwell, these tasty morsels reproduce at an exponential rate, which means if 3 successive generations survive to adulthood, the resulting shrimp mass would be equal to the volume of the sun. Just a few more generations survive and every inch of the known universe is filled with shrimp, a mass of crustaceans expanding outward at the speed of light. If Mike's math holds up, the shrimp apocalypse would be upon us. So what does all this have to do with cursed places? Well, the thing that keeps events like the shrimp apocalypse from happening, it's the natural balance of things. And in the Louisiana swamps, things are savagely out of whack.
The swamp is really in trouble, and everything's gonna die.
The land is vanishing faster here than almost anywhere else on Earth.
It's hard to imagine, but all this was farmland.
25 square miles disappear every year into the ocean. And some point to a curse from 100 years ago. A curse that would make all the land wash away. Just outside of New Orleans, there's a place called Manchac Swamp. And here in the Bayou, there's a story of a local priestess who cursed the land and the people living on it.
Hey guys.
Hey Sam.
I'll take it.
Sit down. Glad to have you.
So you guys know why I'm here, right? It's easy to read about a legend on the internet and dismiss it as folklore. As we search for the intersection point between myth and science, where do you start? Well, you start with the myth. Only a nerd would start with the science.
Anybody got anything on the Curse of Atlantis?
She practiced a lot of magic.
Right.
And she died on September 29th, 1915, which just happened to be when the big storm of 1915, the hurricane, hit. When she died, she put a curse on this place where the swamp would die and bring devastation to all the people here.
So here's how the story goes. In the early 1900s, there wasn't much in the way of hospitals or doctors around here. So if you got sick, you went to Aunt Julia Brown, and she used folk medicine and hoodoo magic to cure you. For years, everything was great. There were satisfied customers all around, and she helped anybody who needed it. But something changed. Julia's worldview went dark, and some say she cursed the land with her dying breath.
30 years ago, the swamp was so thick you couldn't walk through it. Now you can see for a mile in any direction.
So you guys feel like the swamp is getting killed?
Choking to death.
It's choking to death?
Yeah, it's deteriorating at a rate we can never stop.
So you could say Aunt Julia's curse kind of is coming true, huh?
I believe it. I do. It's too much of a coincidence.
No, but one thing can be certain here, everything is getting worse. It's not getting better. Everything that she predicted is now here.
I'm a sucker for a good story.
Can I get another beer? Anybody else want a beer?
And when I sit and have one or, two or, I don't know, 5 beers with a group of people, I want to believe the stories I hear. But still, the locals from Manchac Swamp blame Aunt Julia's curse for any number of strange tragedies and catastrophes. Hurricanes, bridge collapses, unexplained disappearances, and rampant crime that's lasted for 30 years. That's a lot to credit to just one person, no matter how nasty her curse. So who was Aunt Julia Brown, and why would she have cursed her homeland? What made her so furious that people still believe to this day that her rage transcends the grave? And where could she have gotten this power from?
So tell me about Julia Brown.
She's a trick-or-treater healer, a landowner, one of the midwives for the area's voodoo priestess. In those days, those are people you got to deal with.
Right.
But she's kind of creepy, Miss Julia. Julia Brown says stuff like, when I die, we're going to be floating. We're all going to float down the bayou, dead go to float.
Aunt Julia was born into slavery, and this entire region was built on the exploitation of enslaved labor, just like the White House. But then, after the Civil War, slavery was abolished in 1865, and Julia managed to get a plot of land here in the paradise of Manchac Swamp. With the death of the cotton plantation industry, turns out they can't turn a profit without free labor. A new business takes center stage in Louisiana, the lumber boom. Suddenly, everyone wants cypress, and these towns have an endless supply. Money's flowing, things are good. But of course, that's really only if you're white. Aunt Julia saw the destruction of the natural world around her, and virtually none of the profit going to her or her community. Meet the new boss. Same as the old boss.
So, Aunt Julia didn't live here specifically, but this was the kind of place she would have lived.
Right.
And this is what everybody lived in at that time.
This
is
is
little
actual-
tin roof and everything like that.
Yeah.
So you have this world you're building, and then now the loggers are coming through, and they're tearing everything down.
The thing is, too, when you cut the trees down, now there's water. You see, like back in here,
Yeah,
there
it's
used to
new
be a
growth.
field there.
Right.
So not only you lose the tree, you lose the land, too.
Right. The logging is actually stealing the land right out from under the people.
Yeah.
Aunt Julia Brown, she's a hoodoo lady. She's angry about the way them loggers was tearing up the swamp. She'd be out on her porch playing her guitar. I remember she was always singing the same words. One day I'm gonna die, and everything's gonna die with me. This was a good place to live, good place to be, until she cursed it. Never been the same after that old woman died.
This audio is recreated from an interview conducted with Helen Schlosserberg, who lived a few houses down from Aunt Julia. She recounts how Aunt Julia cast a dark spell on the land before she died. And the moment Aunt Julia was being lowered into the ground, the curse became real for the people who lived through that fateful night.
September 29, 1915, she dies. That's the day and night the big hurricane comes in and goes to wiping them out. And everything go to floating and get flooded. Like she said.
She died end of September. Only remember that because it was while they was putting her in the ground that the hurricane hit.
So this hurricane, it came through as she was being buried, right?
Yep.
Lots of people from Frenier and Napton and Rudock were all there for the funeral, and they found themselves in a real bad place when the winds picked up and the water started rising.
That's what makes her curse feel so real, is
because it's the night of week.
Whether you believe in curses or not, you gotta give Aunt Julia credit for her impeccable timing.
They said the wind picks up and the water starts lapping against the railroad tracks, and then the rain starts.
I remember the water rising. I remember thinking, this is it. We're gonna die. But the train was blowing its whistle at the station in Rudock.
And the only people that survived are the ones who made it to the train.
That was people that heard the sound of the horn when the train was blowing the horn. Those are the ones that made it.
Swimming in pitch black water at night is already a nightmare. Add in huge waves, howling winds, and the screams of your friends and neighbors echoing around you. And that feels like an act of God. Now you start to feel like you're cursed.
I can't imagine how scary it would have been when the water's rising, it's the middle of the night, and the train blew its whistle.
It blew and whistled, and that's a couple of miles away.
And if you couldn't make it,
swimming against the tide.
Swimming through this in the dark.
You know, they got gators and snakes everywhere.
You would definitely go, oh, that's the curse. That's old auntie coming to get us.
You're looking at it right there.
She's been singing that song your whole life.
And there you are.
Oh, my God, and here it comes. You'd be like, holy.
In 1915, Aunt Julia Brown cursed the land and the people in the Louisiana Bayou. And on the day of her funeral, a hurricane obliterated the logging towns and most of the people who lived there. Since then, over 40 named storms have ravaged southern Louisiana. But the locals say that the hurricane of 1915 was different, almost supernatural. Not only in the timing, but in its unmatched destruction. That hurricane gave Aunt Julia's curse the gravitas to survive 100 years. I'm meeting Professor Brian House at a hurricane simulation lab in Miami to see if science and legend align.
The storm I'm interested in is a hurricane in 1915 that hit New Orleans where, you know, ostensibly there's a curse around it. Do you know anything about 1915?
Of course, 1915, you know, no satellites. They didn't have nearly the information. You had to rely on shipping. It was known that a storm was coming, but didn't appreciate how strong it could be. When it came into the Gulf, that's when they started to realize too late, really.
Yeah, I mean, that storm came ashore and wiped out 3 whole towns, just wiped them off the map. This is one of the things you study here is the loading, right?
We study the loading on structures,
right,
yes.
Right.
This is the biggest wind over water tank where we have a controlled wind field going over the water.
This indoor lab can recreate the forces of a Category 5 hurricane with huge waves and winds over 215 miles an hour. Since the hurricane of 1915 is the event that solidified the locals' belief in the curse, I want to know exactly what it was they experienced. So we're going to use a simulation to find out if it was just the eerie timing of the event, or was there something else that made that particular hurricane feel supernatural.
We're ready.
All right, talk us through this. Okay.
All right, so this is the mock-up of Aunt Julia's house, or a typical kind of shack.
See a lot of all the waves are breaking.
Oh, yeah. Time to move. Oh, God.
Wow, you get into full wave into that front of that structure.
Yeah, you'd be freaking out.
Just for fun, or, you know, not really fun, but for the hell of it, pretend you're in this house. It's 100 years ago, and you knew this woman, Aunt Julia, and she's furious about her swamp getting destroyed. And you knew about her song, and about the curse she said was coming. And now, on the day of her funeral, the most violent storm in living memory destroys nearly everything in its path. Would it turn you into a believer?
We lost the roof. We
Oh, it's the roof came off.
It's starting to lift up the front.
It would feel like the end of the world.
You're right. Yeah, absolutely.
This is the perfect visualization of the destruction that storm wrought 100 years ago. But how does that storm compare to the one we all know about?
That storm had a surge similar to Katrina, up to like 20 feet. Big waves, you'd be hitting buildings, structures, everything, delivering that load.
Both Katrina and the 1915 storm nailed the southern Louisiana coast, and they both caused Lake Pontchartrain to flood. But Katrina hit east of New Orleans and surged closer to Mississippi, while the eye of Julia's storm hit Manchac Swamp and New Orleans more directly.
Had this 1915 storm struck today, the impacts would be way worse because of the degradation of Louisiana's wetlands. So a lot more of that area is vulnerable to flooding. So this would be a really catastrophic event had the 1915 hurricane occurred now. Or
Yeah, it's hard to think of Katrina as being worse, but it could have been a lot worse.
Could have been a lot worse for New Orleans, that's for sure.
So looking at the power of that wind and that storm and in that tank, you sort of begin to understand, particularly if, that hurricane blew up, the day you're putting Aunt Julia in the ground, you would definitely be feeling like her curse was coming true.
Not to be ageist, but that was then, and this is now. So does the curse still somehow have teeth here in the 21st century?
The same every time you turn the news on, something bad.
For some people in the Bayou, the curse permeates all aspects of their life.
It's got to the point where you can be robbed or killed at any place at any time.
To some, crime and a string of mysterious disappearances are just part and parcel of Aunt Julia's doom.
And then we've had several people go off in the big swamp, never to be seen again.
Never to be seen again.
Yeah.
Bones are being found and things like that.
Right. All right.
So is this just local lore? Or do the men and women who deal with these issues every day have a more logical explanation?
Officer Irvin Reed.
Yes, sir.
I want to say thanks for having us out tonight.
Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah. What do you see most of in terms of crime out here?
Mostly it's murders over the past 6 months, disappearances, kids and women getting taken.
But where are they taken to?
Well, they're still trying to figure that out now.
In the New Orleans metropolitan area, there are 87 current missing person cases. That's over 30% higher than the national average.
Where are we going to go to?
We'll be going on Old Highway 51.
The swamps around here have a reputation for swallowing things up, never to be seen again.
Can we get in there, do you think? You guys want to try to go in there or what?
Watch your step.
This would be a good place to get rid of a body.
Oh yeah, we get a lot of that.
The swamp really can swallow things up and make them disappear.
Oh yeah. Or given enough time, what goes down must come up, so.
Have you ever heard of the Curse of Aunt Julia Brown?
Yes, sir. I'm pretty sure it exists in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the effects of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so don't tell anybody, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but the truth is, when the cameras stopped rolling, I cracked his hardest case, and then I sprained my hand from all the high fives down at the precinct. But I am definitely clocking the fact that a police officer claims to have seen the effects of a curse. But still, I feel like there has to be another explanation. One that maybe has some grounding in science and data. One that I'm hoping to get from Jeff Asher, an ex-CIA analyst who studies crime data for a living. As us massholes say, he's wicked smart.
Is there anything mysterious about the high crime rate?
Murder's the one stat that you can't juke. And so it's the kind of statistic that most people find more reliable. And Louisiana has led the nation in murder rate for 30 straight years.
Wow.
So this is a bar chart race. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these before.
Yeah, these are great.
So this is the top 10 murder rates per year, each year since 1960. You would expect variation, but it's depressingly stable.
For 60 years, Louisiana has ranked in the top 10 in murders per capita in the U.S. And for the last 30 years, the New Orleans area has had one of the highest murder rates in the entire country.
That all makes sense, but what's special about Louisiana?
There's not a lot. Louisiana is generally a poor state, but not the poorest in the nation. Firearms are generally easy to come by, but not the easiest in the country. I'm trying to describe what's happening, but it's depressing and it's mysterious. Kind of like the Mississippi River. It does what it wants to do, and there's not a lot that we can do to interrupt it, at least in my opinion.
Right.
A curse can be the language of those trying to explain the unexplainable. But while we might want to blame a curse for the long-lasting scourge of the crime in the area, the truth is there are too many confounding variables to be sure. Still, there's an inherent human need to have concrete explanations for why things happen. And when events occur that are so odd, like a mysterious string of deadly bridge collapses that keep happening in this tiny area of southern Louisiana, well, even I start to wonder. In the Louisiana Bayou, I've been talking to the locals, and they believe a healer, a hoodoo practitioner named Aunt Julia Brown, is responsible for a slew of tragedies that have ravaged their community since her death in 1915. All the terrible things happening in Louisiana over the past 100 years, from hurricanes to the destruction of the swamp, is because of Aunt Julia. But my new best friends think the curse goes even deeper.
In '76, a barge hit the bridge and took out 2 sections of the bridge there. And the causeway has been hit, what, 3-4 times, and knocked sections out of it also.
Right.
Taking a scientific approach to a curse is hard, but I have to start somewhere. So I'm looking for statistical anomalies, things that stand out, things that help me understand why a group of people might believe they're cursed.
Every 10 years, there
Or
was
so.
64, 74, 84.
Right, pretty regular.
The murder and crime data is one thing. There's plausible explanations for that. But there's another piece of data, something that pops out of the noise. There's an unseemly amount of catastrophic ship strikes and bridge collapses in this region, more than anywhere else in the US. Much more.
Is this the bridge? Yeah, that's the Pontchartrain Bridge. So what the hell happened here? Well, the bridge opened in 1956, and since then it's collapsed 3 times. With cars on it. Oh yeah, with cars on it. Oh my God. Well, they were on it before they fell in the water. Over there is the Judge Seaver Bridge. It also collapsed back in the 90s. Then in 2008, the bridge malfunctioned, and a car fell into the canal down below. Killed the driver. Why did it happen here so much? It's mind-blowing. I don't know. It keeps happening, man.
Keeps happening? That's an understatement. If you look at the bridge collapses in the entire United States because of ship collisions, 1 in 4 happens in this area. That means an area that takes up less than 0.5% of the United States is responsible for 25% of the bridge collapses caused by ship strikes. Now, strangely, the exact same math works when computing Williamsburg, Brooklyn's contribution to the man bun pandemic. So that's an anomaly. But is it evidence of Aunt Julia's curse? Or is there a more logical explanation?
We're just cruising on down the river. We got about 40 miles to go, headed down into the main part of the harbor in New Orleans.
Yeah, great. How do we speed up? Here?
All right, John.
Full speed ahead. Chris Ryder is a retired skipper who oversees a simulator that trains ship captains to navigate the local waterways. But how does he explain the deadly tragedies that keep happening here?
This is the Greater New Orleans Twin Bridges. And this is where that ship, the Brightfield, he lost his engine right here. I was coming up the river when he was coming down. That's when he called me. He was about right here. He said, Chris, I just lost my engine.
Wow.
And we knew where he was going. It turned into the bridge. They had 50 people on it board. And between myself and another tugboat, we managed to rescue half of the crew.
I would not make a good pilot. Sorry.
See, now
you just give him a wave. My bad.
Oh, my word. We are in deep doo-doo here.
In trouble. I just work here, man. You're the pilot.
I know, you bail it out.
You're the pilot. Let's keep going, because I don't want to see. We'll leave this in our... Pretend it didn't happen. Leave this poor guy in the water. Yeah, we'll just keep going. So, just let me get this straight. These waters are so dangerous because...
A certain time of the year when the river's rising, it picks up all of the debris off the riverbanks. Logs and trees. When it gets bad, it gets real bad.
Right.
It's mesmerizing. It's an optical illusion, so you gotta really get up and shake yourself. And when you get in the lake on a black night, and you get driftwood stuck in your propellers or your rudders.
Logs and trees in the water? Now, what does that remind me of?
They logged the cypress. And there's a lot of cypress logs that they left that are still just as solid today as the day they cut them because they've been in the mud.
So ships are ramming into bridges in part because they're dodging a maze of floating trees. So could it all come back to the logging industry? The same thing that pissed Aunt Julia off in the first place?
What happened here, man?
They're logging again, bulldozing again, and the big machine they got right here.
Yeah.
That's known as a marsh buggy right there.
And it just makes a big trail of...
Yep, and they cut and chop, they push to the side and cut and chop. There's about 25 or 30 miles of this right now cut. If the spirit's still alive and well for Miss Julia, this is gonna make her mad again.
Whether or not you believe in Aunt Julia's curse, her vision of the future seems to be shockingly accurate.
I don't even know what they look like.
It's a giant rat with a long tail. As soon as y'all see him, y'all can start shooting.
If I told you that a business tycoon of a certain famous hot sauce that goes really well on eggs bought a bunch of giant South American rodents to create a new fur trade in Louisiana.
1957, they brought the nutries from South America to Avery Islands, where they produce Tabasco hot sauce.
Oh, yeah?
And that invader has single-handedly destroyed tens of thousands of acres of the bayou. Would you believe me?
Nutria is a rodent that grows up to 26 pounds. They're big, big rats.
Oh, there's one right in the grass.
Boy, that's a big son of a...
Got him. That was a good shot.
That's what we're after, boys. That's a good-sized nutria there.
That's my idea of a nightmare.
That animal eats a quarter of its body weight each day. You can look at the teeth on these things. They burrow the root out, so when the root's exposed, then obviously the mud's exposed, and that's when you get the erosion. They'll completely take a 20-yard diameter island. In a week, it's underwater. Just completely.
In a week, it's underwater.
Absolutely. It's hard to imagine, but all this was farmland.
So they're just literally
down.
sinking the bayou by themselves.
Yep.
The damage that's been done by these creatures is overwhelming, and the residents of southern Louisiana are fighting a hopeless rearguard battle against something like 20 million invaders. So they've started a bounty program.
Let's go get some more.
$6 to any man, woman, or child who turns in a nutria tail, dead or alive.
In the bank, in the bank.
Good job. That's two big ones. Well, good deal, man.
Yeah, nice.
Thanks for saving the marsh.
Yeah, hey, $12.
Hey,
dinner's on me.
Aunt Julia said she was going to take the swamp with her when she died. And between the devastating logging and the insane destruction caused by the rodents of unusual size, it seems like Aunt Julia's curse is coming true. The swamp is disappearing.
This whole area used to be full of cypress.
This was a massive cypress swamp. You can still see some of the stumps. Some of those stumps are so big you could park a pickup truck on them. So they're very similar to redwoods. That's the closest cousin to bald cypress is the redwood tree.
Okay. So tell me the factors that are going into the destruction of the bayou. What's destroying this swamp?
Well, too much flooding, not enough nutrients, and one of the main constraints for this whole ecosystem, hundreds of thousands of acres, is saltwater intrusion. That's probably the #1 issue.
So you're saying that salinity is destroying this swamp?
Yeah, and everything's gonna die at some point. No one believes me though, so.
Dr. Schaefer says that millions of nutria rats eat the saplings of the trees, and the old logging canals have destroyed the natural levees which allow salty ocean water to run backwards up into the swamp, killing the old trees. So it's the perfect storm.
This is a great example. 0.2 instead of 1.3. So the soil was seeing an order of magnitude more salt than the water. That will actually kill a tupelo, it'll kill a maple, but it would kill all the other species in the swamp.
Okay.
The swamp is really in trouble. It's in big trouble.
Logging began the destruction of the swamp, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and one terrible decision led to an absolute catastrophe. The Army Corps of Engineers started building walls along the Mississippi River in 1930. It seemed like a great idea at the time. Stop the constant flooding, the destruction. The problem is, the river used to bring 85 million tons of soil and spread it over the bayou each year. It was an incredible act. The earth healed its own scars, whatever the hurricanes or logging channels or erosion washed away. But we've locked the river up, and that soil now dumps out into deep water instead of rebuilding the delta. Combine that with rising sea levels, and 25 square miles of coastal Louisiana falls into the ocean every year. But because the causation is complex and multiple, people throw up their hands and cry curse. But really, it all comes back to one factor. To us.
Cypress. They live about 3,000 years.
Oh, wow.
And unlike other trees, cypress does not fall over in hurricanes. It's got a massive root system. It's only about this deep, but it goes for 200 feet in both directions, and so it forms a tapestry with all the other trees.
Right, so they interlock and they...
To blow one tree over, you've got to blow 100,000 trees over.
Right, so it doesn't happen.
So Hurricane Katrina, we modeled cypress swamp below New Orleans, 12,000 acres.
Right.
Brought Katrina back in, flooding was reduced by 82%.
Right, just the swamp there. Hugely
It would have
important.
completely protected New Orleans. You know, if I had it my way, we would plant at least 10 million cypress. We can probably save 2/3 of coastal Louisiana. If we're smart enough.
Look, I hate easy answers because they're usually wrong. Life is complicated and nothing is simple. That's on my coat of arms. So I'd love to tell you there's nothing to the curse, but everything Aunt Julia said seems to be coming true. So let's go a little further down the rabbit hole, just in case. Did Aunt Julia really use hoodoo to unleash 100 years of pain and destruction on the swamp? Or did hoodoo somehow give her the ability to see into the future? In 1915, a hoodoo priestess named Aunt Julia Brown sang a song, and her neighbors thought it was a curse. She threatened to take all the land with her when she died. So far, it seems like it's coming true. But was it a curse or just a coincidence? Or could it have been a profound warning from someone who could sense that there was trouble on the road ahead? But how could she know? And what is hoodoo anyway?
Just imagine being on a cotton field or on a plantation and being brutalized, and your spouse and children being brutalized, and the idea that a god or power or spirit can seek revenge on massa. It was the one thing that the enslaved African had that gave them power.
Hoodoo originated in West Africa and adapted under the chains of slavery, whispered on ships and plantations. It manifested in the desperate desires of the powerless, stripped from their homes, lives shattered, brought to a hell they did not understand. Hoodoo is also called root work, using the power of tree roots to conjure spells, to heal, and even to curse.
So tell me about root work.
So at the root level of what root work and hoodoo is, it's about nature. And using nature, plants, mosses to heal. And then the supernatural aspects of it do carry from an ancient West African perspective that trees carry a spirit, wood carries a spirit, the ground that it grows in carries a spirit.
Wow.
So it's more than just healing, ingestion, using the botanical nature of what these plants are, but there's that spirit power. It's definitely something out here with us. It's responding to the energy. Now, what we will do is take the 9 grains against poverty. It's a ritual that we do to bring blessings. It's also a way of sort of appeasing Julia Brown and making sure that we leave this space with the good energy as opposed to anything negative. So you're gonna kneel over the bowl.
All right.
I'm gonna sprinkle you a little bit.
Sure.
The energy is infectious. Whether summoned from the spirit world or purely human in nature, Prince Tai and his friends believe the power to connect with the other realm is unlocked by the roots. There's magic in the roots. Magic strong enough to unleash a 100-year curse. But it raises a question. Is there any kind of scientific explanation to the magic of the roots?
The more people look, the more we realize that plants actually work like a community. Research is showing that the plant-fungal relationship is a symbiotic one. So we know plants in an ecosystem divert some of their resources to other species. It's not just their own species.
So a plant from a totally different species will help other struggling plants.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. And what kind of things would it send?
Nutrients. So the fungal network could tap into another root system and distribute those nutrients throughout.
Nutrients. So it would be interacting with these grasses and communicating with basically every plant.
Right.
Anything with roots.
And that's kind of important because the system around here is pretty much starved of nutrients.
Prince Tai said the trees carry a spirit.
Wood carries a spirit. The ground that it grows in carries a spirit.
Turns out, cutting-edge science is basically saying the same thing. Dr. Dimitra and other scientists around the world are only beginning to understand these fungal networks called mycorrhizae, which allow trees to communicate through the roots. In parts of British Columbia, this root network is literally the difference between life and death. Young saplings in deeply shaded areas of the forest don't get enough sunlight to survive. So other big trees, often hundreds of feet away, pump sugar into their roots and keep them alive. If the cypress roots in the swamp have this network, then the roots are, in a way, magical, just like Aunt Julia said. And it could be the key to restoring balance and the swamp saving itself. So there could be a massive spiderweb network of fungi that spread out from this tree.
That's right. Any of these plants could potentially harbor mycorrhizae. So really what we want to do is take these back to the lab, take a look. And if they're present, then we know that they're out here benefiting the ecosystem from
So if we can
photosynthesis.
find that fungus, this tree will have a much better chance.
The only hope is these little roots right here.
How far across the swamp could it stretch?
Potentially forever.
And that may not be the only magic hiding in these roots.
What are we hoping to find in the roots?
It's called a dark septate endophyte. They're enzymes. There have been experiments that have shown that you can convert plants that cannot tolerate salt into plants that can tolerate salt.
Wow.
Just by adding endophytes or introducing endophytes to those plants.
That's worked.
That has worked,
Right.
yes. Just by adding an endophyte from a plant that lives on the coast, they were able to convert rice plants into plants that are able to tolerate salt. So we know it can be done.
Right.
And our hope is that that is one way to counteract the stressors that cypress are experiencing.
Although more research is needed, if the microscope shows that endophytes have colonized inside the cypress roots, these super tiny organisms could hold the key to saving the wetlands.
Well, let's take a look.
As you can see, this is a long process.
We're gonna figure it out
It's
right
like-
now, Doc.
Sometimes it's like, yeah, finding a needle in a haystack.
No, sure.
Oh, that's what you're looking for?
I'm in New Orleans with Dr. Dimitra Kendalepis, where we've just taken root samples from cypress trees in the nearby Manchac Swamp. We're now back at her lab looking for fungi, which would be evidence of some sort of crazy, magical symbiosis that allows trees to communicate and share nutrients. And this could be the swamp's only chance of survival.
So what are you looking for now again?
You want to find structures of the mutualistic fungi. For dark septate endophytes, you're looking for the microsclerotia. They look like little balls inside the cell, little dark balls. Oh, yeah, that's what you're looking for. If you look at the thick strands, you'll see the darker structure sort of near the top of that root. Yeah.
That ball there?
Yeah, well, it looks like balls have been stuffed into a cell.
Oh, yeah.
Those are dark septate endophyte.
Wow.
Those are so finely branched that it's really easy to absorb anything and distribute those nutrients.
How does that happen?
I wish I knew. I wish I knew.
Then we'd be all set,
The
right?
big question, how do they do it? Evolution works all random and it's accidental. If there's something out there that happens to make that environment advantageous to it, then that'll perpetuate.
Right.
This successful lab test is proof that the key to saving Louisiana's bayou might lie in the cypress roots themselves.
We know that all of the flooding and all of that destruction that happened with Hurricane Katrina could have been avoided if that swamp was still in place.
Right.
The cypress trees also are able to sequester carbon. So if that tree is pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and it's burying it in its roots, all of that carbon is coming out of the air and not perpetuating the cycle of climate change.
So the thing that could save the world is these roots, basically.
Yes, cypress can save the world.
Cypress would save the world.
Long before Aunt Julia ever practiced her hoodoo, before even the American slave trade, the people in West Africa believed the roots held power beyond our understanding. It's taken science hundreds of years to catch up and confirm that, in a way, they were right.
There's a lot that's been said about Aunt Julia's curse. It's said that she cursed the swamp. I don't necessarily agree with that.
Oh, really?
That could have been a prediction to get across to these people, live right, get it together, or all of this could be gone.
The interesting part of it to me is a curse comes from transgression, right? Like you've done something to offend the gods, you've done something wrong. And all the ills that are assailing Louisiana, all the things that are destroying the wetlands, comes from things we've created, come from problems that mankind has made. You know, the land is cursed, absolutely. And it's a curse brought on by the very thing Aunt Julia was railing against. You know, you were destroying her forests, you were destroying her land, and it was all gonna get washed away. And that's exactly what happened.
So the curse of Aunt Julia wasn't a curse at all. Maybe it was the wise words of a woman whose connection to the earth far exceeded any understanding science could offer at the time. The Louisiana Bayou is in trouble, but not because of magic, but because of mankind's short-sightedness and the laws of unintended consequences. The accelerated effects of the hurricanes are because of all of it: logging, canals, the vanishing swampland, climate change, and even the invasive rodent that destroys everything in its path. These are all man-made maladies. We created imbalances in the natural order. And as for the possibility of the shrimpocalypse, I got some good news. Shrimp are delicious. But in the connectedness in our ecosystem, we can find balance. There are hundreds of people who are dedicated to restoring order in the bayou. And maybe the best hope of all is in the roots. The very thing that gave Aunt Julia her power. It could ultimately be the key to ending the curse.